Trapped by Talent. Escaping the Golden Cage of the Wrong Career. By Alexander Dardar. Introduction. The hidden cost of being good at the wrong thing. You did everything right. You studied hard. You made smart choices. You picked the degree that made sense, the job that paid well, the path that impressed the people who mattered. Maybe you're even successful, on paper. People look up to you. Your LinkedIn glows. Your family is proud. And yet, deep down, something feels off. Not broken. Not failing. Just off. You wake up with a quiet dread that has no name. You perform well, but your soul feels absent. You've asked yourself more than once, is this it? Then felt guilty for even wondering. Because how dare you question the life you worked so hard to build? If this sounds familiar, this book is for you. It's not about dramatic failure or reckless quitting. It's about a more subtle, more dangerous trap, the one where you're praised, promoted, even envied, while silently unraveling inside. The one where you're good at what you do, but it no longer feels good to be doing it. It's about success in the wrong direction. This is the story of people who've built golden cages out of their talent. People who are overachieving but underliving. People who learned how to be excellent long before they learned how to be whole. Maybe that's you. Maybe you've spent years chasing what looked right, while ignoring what felt right. Maybe you were told to be practical. Maybe you believed that being gifted came with obligations. Maybe you thought that if you worked hard enough, the joy would come later. But later never came. This book is about reclaiming that joy, without burning your life to the ground. We'll walk through the real reasons you got stuck, the silent curriculum you never realized you absorbed, the cultural and family scripts that shaped your early choices, the emotional confusion of being rewarded for work that depletes you. We'll name the quiet grief that comes with realizing you've built a life that doesn't fit. And then, we'll begin again. You'll learn how to listen to your inner compass. How to pivot strategically, even if you can't just quit. How to redefine success on your own terms. And how to build a life that doesn't just look good, but feels honest, whole, and fully yours. You don't have to have a perfect plan. You just have to tell yourself the truth. Because being talented should feel like a gift, not a sentence. And being human means you're allowed to evolve. So if you're standing at the edge of a life that no longer fits, if you're tired of performing, and ready to feel again, this is your invitation. Not to jump. Not to run. But to begin. Let's find our way home. Part 1. The Trap: How We Got Stuck. Before we can change direction, we have to understand how we got here. For many of us, misalignment didn't begin with a bad boss or a single wrong turn. It began much earlier, with praise that shaped our identity, with choices made too young, with dreams we inherited instead of chose. The trap wasn't built overnight. It was built slowly, out of talent, expectations, and the quiet belief that being good at something means you must devote your life to it. This section unpacks the invisible architecture of that trap. How talent becomes a cage. How education hardens into obligation. How competence confuses us into staying. It's not about blame. It's about clarity. Because once you can see the trap for what it is, you can begin to find the door. Chapter 1. When Talent Becomes a Cage. The invisible prison of being good at the wrong thing. From the moment we take our first test or win our first spelling bee, we start to learn a dangerous idea, that what we're good at is who we are. The child who solves math problems quickly becomes our future engineer. The teenager who writes well is told to be a lawyer. The kid who memorizes facts is nudged toward medicine. It sounds like encouragement. It looks like support. But often, it becomes a trap made of praise, well-meaning, but limiting. And by the time we're adults, many of us have built entire careers out of skills we never actually chose. We're not in jobs we love. We're in jobs that were available. Or praised. Or expected. And if we're honest, we're not fulfilled. We're exhausted. Confused. Guilty for even questioning it. Because who walks away from something they're good at? Who leaves behind the very thing that others celebrate in them? The answer, increasingly, is people who want to live. How the cage gets built. The talent cage doesn't snap shut one day. It's built brick by brick, over years of praise, pressure, and practicality. 1. Early praise. You're labeled gifted at 7. Your identity fuses with achievement. You chase A's because they feel like love. And no one ever stops to ask, but do you like this? By the time you're 17, you're not asking who you want to be, you're trying to live up to the expectations in other people's eyes. 2. Economic pressure. In many countries, survival overrides self-expression. If you come from scarcity, the idea of choosing joy over a paycheck feels indulgent. Be practical, they say. And they're not wrong. But practicality without purpose is a recipe for burnout. 3. Cultural status. In some cultures, careers aren't just jobs, they're badges of honor. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, these are the roles that grant respect, even when they steal your soul. To walk away from one of them is to risk shame, not just disappointment. True story, a soul in scrubs. Meet Nondi, a brilliant medical student from South Africa. Top of her class. Scholarship winner. Her professors called her a natural healer. But what nobody saw was what happened after she left the hospital. The panic attacks, the insomnia, the sobbing on the bathroom floor. I wasn't afraid of blood or disease, she told me. I was afraid that I'd spend my entire life doing something that made me feel dead inside. After years of hiding her truth, she left medicine. She's now a fashion designer creating ethically made pieces inspired by Zulu heritage. She still heals, but now through art, identity, and confidence. I didn't leave medicine because I wasn't good at it, she says. I left because it was killing me quietly. The research speaks. Nondi is not alone. A 2023 LinkedIn study found that 41% of professionals chose their current career path primarily for financial stability, not passion. And of those, nearly 60% reported chronic dissatisfaction, despite external success. These are not dropouts or underachievers. These are scholarship recipients, high performers, respected professionals. People who made all the right choices, and are now quietly wondering how they got here. The talent trap quadrant. To better understand how talent can become a trap, it helps to think about the intersection of two questions. Do I enjoy this? And am I good at it? When you genuinely enjoy what you do and you're skilled at it, you're in a state of alignment often referred to as flow. This is the ideal zone, where passion and proficiency meet. People in this space tend to feel energized, fulfilled, and naturally motivated. Unfortunately, this combination is rarer than it should be. Then there's the quadrant where many high achievers unknowingly live. They're good at what they do, but they don't enjoy it. Outwardly, they seem successful, respected, productive, well compensated. But inwardly, they feel drained, disconnected, and sometimes even resentful. This is the trap. You're performing well, but perishing emotionally. You're praised for your output, but it costs you your peace. On the flip side, there are those who love what they're doing but haven't yet developed mastery. They may be beginners, but their enthusiasm and curiosity drive them forward. This is the growing zone, where potential outweighs proficiency, and the journey is just beginning. Finally, there's the quadrant that represents total misalignment, when you neither enjoy the work nor feel competent at it. In this space, people often feel lost, stuck, or deeply unmotivated. It's the emotional equivalent of quicksand, draining in every direction and difficult to escape without help or clarity. Many high performers live for years, even decades, in the second category, good at their job, but quietly miserable. They don't always recognize the dissonance, because external validation drowns out inner discomfort. They dream of leaving, but guilt and fear hold them in place. Understanding where you are on this emotional performance spectrum is the first step to reclaiming your alignment. Because being good at something is no longer a good enough reason to stay. Why it's so hard to leave. People ask, if you're so unhappy, why don't you just quit? But the truth is, leaving something you're good at can feel like emotional suicide. Because it's not just a job. It's your identity. It's how your parents describe you at dinner parties. It's your LinkedIn headline, your student debt, your self-worth. Walking away feels like betrayal of your community, your family, your own past. But here's the truth. You are allowed to outgrow the dreams that once kept you alive. And you are allowed to redefine success on your own terms. Permission to choose again. Here's what I want you to know, right now, at the beginning of this book. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it forever. Just because others admire your path doesn't mean you're obligated to stay. Just because your resume makes people clap doesn't mean your heart has to. You are not your job title. You are not your degree. You are not your parents' expectations or your boss's approval. You are a whole person. With dreams that may evolve. With needs that may change. With a soul that refuses to shrink into a checkbox on a corporate org chart. What this chapter is asking of you. Not to quit. Not to panic. But to notice. To begin asking. Am I thriving, or just performing? Do I feel alive, or just competent? What would I do if I didn't feel the pressure to prove anything? Because sometimes the cage isn't made of steel. It's made of stories we didn't know we could rewrite. In the next chapter, we'll explore how early decisions, about degrees, debt, and safe careers, shape the path we walk. And how to reclaim the pen before it writes a life you no longer recognize. Because being talented should feel like a gift, not a sentence. Chapter 2, Degrees, Debt, and Disillusionment. For most of us, the first major decision that sets our career path in motion is not choosing a job. It's choosing a degree. And more often than not, we choose it too early, too quickly, and for the wrong reasons. At 17 or 18, we are asked to commit, not just to a field of study, but to a future. At an age when we can barely vote or rent a car, we're expected to pick a lifelong direction. So we choose what seems safe. Or what will make our parents proud. Or what offers financial promise. Or, let's be honest, what we can afford. And thus, one of the most expensive and identity-shaping decisions of our lives gets made without the clarity or maturity to know if it's right. We don't choose degrees based on alignment. We choose them based on assumption. And then we carry those assumptions into decades of work we may never truly enjoy. The myth of the safe degree. In many cultures, degrees are seen as shields, protection against poverty, status loss, or failure. There's a list of acceptable options: medicine, engineering, law, accounting, business. Choose one of these, and you're told you'll always be employable. It's a seductive idea. Who doesn't want security? Who doesn't want their parents to sleep easy knowing they made the right choice? But security is not the same as satisfaction. And many of the degrees we pursue for stability become the very roots of our disillusionment. We graduate and discover that the job isn't what we imagined. Or the work is tolerable, but lifeless. Or the income is decent, but comes with stress, pressure, or values misalignment. Or worse, the jobs don't even exist in the way we were promised. What we were told would make us safe often makes us stuck. True story, Arjun's awakening. Arjun grew up in a small town in India where engineering was considered the gold standard. If you got into a top school and landed a job at a major automotive firm, you were set for life. Arjun did exactly that. Mechanical engineering degree. High honors. Job at a major firm. By 25, he was exactly where everyone hoped he would be. But inside, he was falling apart. The factory floor felt like a cage. The noise, the monotony, the management style, it drained him. He felt robotic, detached, depressed. In his downtime, he began learning about meditation. Then mindfulness. Then somatic awareness. It started as a way to survive, but it soon became his purpose. By 30, Arjun left his job. Today, he teaches mindfulness to students and professionals across India. He lives modestly but meaningfully. I studied machines, he told me, but now I help people understand themselves. He doesn't regret studying engineering. But he deeply regrets how long it took to admit that it wasn't his path. The cost of a mistake. Choosing the wrong degree is not a trivial mistake. It's not just 4 years. It's often 10 or 20, because once the degree is earned, it becomes the path of least resistance. You pursue jobs related to it. You build experience in it. You get promoted in it. And before you know it, you've built a whole life on a foundation that doesn't fit. For many, this foundation also includes debt. The pressure to recoup the cost of education is intense. People stay in jobs they dislike simply to make their student loan payments. They tell themselves it's temporary. They tell themselves it's rational. But temporary turns into a decade. Rational turns into resignation. Debt turns a bad fit into a long-term sentence. According to the World Economic Forum, the global mismatch between degrees and workplace satisfaction is growing, especially in developing economies where higher education is still seen as the fastest route to upward mobility. And yet, those same economies are filled with young professionals who feel empty despite being successful. This is not just a personal issue. It's a systemic one. We are funneling millions of bright minds into narrow corridors, and then wondering why they feel lost, anxious, or disillusioned. Why we choose what we choose. The reasons most people choose their degrees have less to do with desire and more to do with survival. Let's look at the most common ones. 1. Family expectation. My parents always wanted me to be a doctor. In many households, your choice of major is not just a personal decision, it's a family project. Especially if you're the first to go to university. 2. Financial pressure. I needed something that would pay well, fast. When money is tight, practicality beats passion. A vocationally useful degree becomes the goal, even if it's misaligned with your interests. 3. Fear of the unknown. I didn't know what else to do. Many teens have never explored other interests. They pick familiar fields because it's easier than admitting they don't know. 4. Social status. Being an engineer, lawyer sounded impressive. Prestige often outweighs personality. The cultural cachet of certain fields can override our inner voice. None of these reasons are inherently wrong. But when they are the only reasons, they lead to shallow roots and shaky fulfillment. The real problem isn't the degree. It's the direction. To be clear, education is not the enemy. Degrees can be transformative, empowering, and practical. But a degree should be a tool, not a trap. A starting point, not a cage. The deeper issue isn't what you studied. It's what you believed that degree meant. You believed it had to define you forever. You believed you couldn't pivot. You believed your investment was only worth it if you stayed. And so you stayed, even when it stopped making sense. But here's the truth. You are allowed to evolve beyond your degree. You are allowed to question whether the person who chose that path at 18 still lives in you. You are allowed to build a new direction on top of the old one. Because your degree may be a chapter, but it doesn't have to be the whole book. Education that leads to evolution. What if we thought about education differently? What if we treated it as fuel, not a fence? What if the goal of learning wasn't to find a single career, but to discover who we are, and how we want to serve? Imagine a world where universities offered career design courses rooted in values and curiosity, not just job markets. Students were encouraged to explore multiple fields before declaring a major. Adults felt free to reinvent without shame or debt paralysis. We're not there yet. But you can start living that way now, by giving yourself permission to unlearn the idea that your degree is your destiny. You don't have to throw it all away. Some people hesitate to pivot because they assume it means wasting everything they studied. But most degrees aren't wasted, they're simply repurposed. A former accountant becomes a financial coach for artists. A civil engineer transitions into sustainable urban farming. A biology major writes science fiction based on real breakthroughs. Every skill, every lens, every hardship can be reframed. It's not about erasing your past. It's about reinterpreting it. Before you move on, ask yourself, why did I choose the degree I chose? Who was I trying to please? What did I assume it would give me? Does that still feel true? If I had to choose again today, what would I do differently? Because awareness is the beginning of agency. And agency is the beginning of freedom. In the next chapter, we'll look at a cruel irony, how being good at something can actually make it harder to leave. We'll explore the emotional confusion that happens when competence traps you in a life you didn't truly choose. Because sometimes the most dangerous prison is not failure. It's success in the wrong direction. Chapter 3: The Curse of Competence. What if the very thing you're good at is the reason you're stuck? It's a strange question, but one that echoes across countless lives. People excelling in careers they can't stand, advancing in roles they never wanted, collecting accolades that feel hollow. They are capable. They are respected. And they are quietly unraveling. This is the paradox of competence, when being good at something becomes the biggest barrier to doing what you actually want. It doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual. Subtle. A trap disguised as success. You're good at writing reports, so you get asked to write more. You're a great public speaker, so you get pushed into leadership roles. You're excellent at project management, so you never get to create. People reward your results, not your resonance. And slowly, the life you're good at becomes the life you're stuck in. This is what I call the curse of competence, when your ability holds you hostage. Why being good feels like a life sentence. Competence is seductive. It makes things easy. You get promoted, trusted, praised. You start to build your identity around performance. But then something shifts. The ease becomes boredom. The praise becomes pressure. The role becomes a routine you can't escape. And because you're still doing well, it's hard to justify change. People say, "But you're so good at this." You tell yourself, "I've come this far, I should just keep going." You question whether it's even reasonable to want something different. But deep down, you know, you're not fulfilled. You're just functional. You are succeeding, but at the wrong thing. Eleanor's story, the lawyer who stayed too long. Eleanor was a corporate lawyer in the UK, top of her class. Recruited straight into a prestigious firm. Within 5 years, she was leading complex litigation cases across Europe. But every morning, she felt a tightness in her chest. She cried before meetings. She developed migraines that wouldn't go away. And yet, she stayed. For 10 years. It felt irresponsible to leave, she told me. I had worked so hard. I was good at it. I was respected. But I hated it. I hated who I became inside those walls. Eventually, her body forced the decision. After collapsing from exhaustion, she took a sabbatical and never went back. Today, Eleanor runs a trauma-informed coaching practice. She uses her analytical skills, but in ways that heal, not harm. My competence got me in the door, she said. But it also kept me from leaving for far too long. Why competence is so hard to walk away from. When you've spent years getting good at something, leaving it behind feels like betrayal. Not just of your profession, but of your effort, your reputation, your identity. Here's why people stay. 1. Sunk cost fallacy. I've invested so much already. I can't just walk away now. But sunk costs don't justify sunk lives. Past effort shouldn't dictate future misery. 2. External validation. Everyone thinks I'm doing great. I'd look crazy to leave. The need for approval often outweighs the desire for peace, until it doesn't. 3. Fear of uncertainty. What if I'm not good at the next thing? Competence gives you control. Letting it go means becoming a beginner again. 4. Guilt. Other people would kill for this job. Who am I to complain? Gratitude doesn't cancel out misalignment. You can be thankful and unfulfilled. The identity crisis of high performers. When your worth has been tied to achievement for most of your life, the idea of changing paths feels like erasing yourself. You think, if I'm not a lawyer, who am I? If I leave engineering, am I wasting my degree? If I stop being the responsible one, will people still respect me? But here's the truth. You are not your job. You are not your output. You are not your LinkedIn headline. You are something deeper. Something more fluid, more alive, more complex. The problem isn't that you're capable. It's that you've mistaken capability for calling. A new way to see it, competence as clue, not cage. Instead of viewing your current skills as a trap, start viewing them as transferable tools. You don't need to abandon your competence. You need to redirect it. Maybe your legal background becomes a foundation for advocacy. Maybe your finance skills help build ethical startups. Maybe your data experience informs social impact research. The question isn't, should I waste my skills? It's where else could these skills serve something that lights me up? Because the goal isn't to throw everything away. It's to carry what's useful into a new story. The talent trap quadrant revisited, in prose. Many people live in a space where they're good at what they do, but they don't enjoy it. They're not failing, they're just slowly dying inside. It's like driving a luxury car in the wrong direction. Smooth ride. Impressive engine. But every mile takes you further from where you want to be. That's the essence of the curse. You're high-performing and misaligned. And that mismatch is emotionally exhausting. Studies show that high achievers in the wrong roles experience more burnout than average performers in aligned roles. Not because they're lazy, but because sustaining excellence in something you secretly resent is psychologically brutal. Your body knows. Your creativity knows. Your spirit knows. It's time you listen, too. You are allowed to want more. Here's what I want you to remember as you finish this chapter. You're allowed to want more, even if you already have enough. You're allowed to pivot, even if you're praised where you are. You're allowed to start again, even if you were excellent before. Being good at something doesn't mean you owe it your life. Before you move on, take a moment to reflect. What are you known for being good at? Do you actually enjoy doing it, or have you just learned to tolerate it? If you weren't afraid of disappointing anyone, what would you walk away from? Where might your existing skills be used in service of something that energizes you? Write your answers down. Let them be messy. You're not solving your career today, you're starting to tell the truth. And that's where freedom begins. In the next chapter, we explore the moment many of us hit the wall, when success becomes unbearable, and the cost of staying begins to outweigh the fear of leaving. It's called success without satisfaction, and for many, it's the moment everything begins to change. Chapter 4: The Silent Curriculum. What school taught you without ever saying it out loud? Long before we entered the workforce, before job titles, office politics, or performance reviews, many of us already absorbed a set of unspoken rules about success. Not from books. Not from lectures. But from something quieter and more enduring, the way our educational systems made us feel. We were taught math, science, grammar, and history. But beneath the subjects, we learned something else entirely. We learned what earned praise and what invited shame. We learned what it meant to be smart, disciplined, successful. We learned how to perform. And slowly, silently, we internalized a curriculum that had nothing to do with the syllabus, and everything to do with identity. This was not the education you received. This was the education beneath the education. I call it the silent curriculum. The unspoken, invisible schooling we all went through, which continues to shape our careers, relationships, and sense of worth to this day. What we were really taught. You probably don't remember every textbook or assignment, but you likely remember how you felt when you got a wrong answer. Or how proud your parents were when you aced an exam. Or how tightly you clung to the idea that being liked by teachers meant you were on the right path. These weren't isolated moments. They were patterns. Let's break down some of the most common messages hidden in the silent curriculum. 1. Obedience over originality. You learned early that coloring outside the lines wasn't bold, it was disruptive. Following rules earned gold stars. Challenging them often earned silence, or worse, punishment. So you adjusted. You complied. This creates adults who mistake compliance for stability. People who stay in jobs they've outgrown, not because they love the work, but because they've been taught that staying in line is the respectable thing to do. 2. Performance over process. Grades became currency. Deadlines became moral tests. The question wasn't are you learning, but are you achieving? Students who struggled were often labeled slow. Those who excelled were praised, even if they were miserable. We carried this into adulthood. Promotions matter more than purpose. Output becomes proof of worth. Burnout becomes a badge. All because we were taught that only visible, quantifiable success matters. 3. Singular identity over multipotentiality. From the age of 10, or even earlier, we're asked the loaded question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not who are you becoming? Not what lights you up. Just one title. One job. One lane. This binary thinking limits us. It convinces us that changing direction is failure, that exploration is immaturity, and that starting over is dangerous. But humans aren't meant to be linear. We're meant to evolve. 4. Mistakes equals shame. In school, mistakes weren't feedback. They were red marks, late-night tears, awkward silences. If you answered wrong, you felt stupid. The message was clear: better to stay silent than be wrong in public. As adults, this morphs into professional paralysis. We fear proposing new ideas. We hesitate to apply for jobs unless we meet every requirement. We avoid risk, not because we're incapable, but because our younger selves were taught that mistakes equals humiliation. 5. External approval equals internal worth. Perhaps the most enduring lesson of all: if someone in power approves of you, you must be doing something right. So we chase praise. We become experts at making other people proud, parents, professors, managers, while losing touch with what actually makes us feel alive. We become fluent in the language of validation, but illiterate in the language of self-trust. The legacy of the silent curriculum. If you've ever stayed in a job longer than you wanted to, just because it looked good on paper, you've felt it. If you've ever hesitated to pivot careers because it might look flaky, you've felt it. If you've ever been praised for your professionalism while quietly burning out, you've definitely felt it. These silent teachings didn't end when you graduated. They became part of your internal operating system. And unless you consciously reprogram that system, you will continue making choices that feel safe, but shrink you. Aisha's story, from top student to trapped manager. Aisha grew up in Cairo. The eldest daughter of 5. Bright, diligent, always top of her class. Her teachers adored her. Her parents celebrated her every report card. She learned early that her role was to succeed, not just for herself, but for her family. She went on to study business at one of Egypt's top universities. She secured a management role by 26, supervising a department in a fast-growing logistics company. From the outside, she was a poster child for ambition. But inside, she was empty. She woke up dreading her inbox. She faked enthusiasm in meetings. At night, she wrote poetry, secretly, quietly, as if it were something to be ashamed of. When we first spoke, she told me, "I feel like I'm living someone else's dream. I don't know how to stop performing." It wasn't her job title that trapped her. It was the identity that had been built, layer by layer, from a lifetime of doing what was expected. Eventually, she began sharing her writing anonymously. Slowly, cautiously. Her poems gained traction. She found her voice again, not as a manager, but as a human being. Today, she works part-time as a consultant while developing a platform for young Arab writers. "I don't reject my past," she said. "But I'm finally creating a future that feels like mine." Unlearning, the hardest education of all. There's a reason unlearning is harder than learning. It asks you to question your foundations. To hold your identity up to the light and ask, was this truly mine, or was it handed to me? It's uncomfortable, disorienting, but also necessary. Here are just a few of the beliefs you might need to unlearn. That success is linear. That changing your mind means failure. That being excellent at something obligates you to do it forever. That your worth is tied to your productivity. That your value depends on someone else's approval. Unlearning is not rebellion. It's remembrance. You're not trying to destroy who you've been. You're trying to return to who you've always been, beneath the noise. Global reflections, different curriculum, same pattern. Whether you studied in Lagos, London, Lahore, or Los Angeles, the silent curriculum tends to whisper the same thing. Follow the rules, keep your head down, impress the right people. But I've seen the same script play out across cultures and class lines. In South Korea, students burn out in high school just to access safe degrees. In Brazil, family obligation overrides personal passion, even into one's 30s. In Nigeria, prestige professions like medicine or law are still seen as the gold standard, even as mental health crises rise among young professionals. In the US, student debt traps millions in careers they would leave if they weren't so financially and emotionally burdened. Different languages. Same cage. Reflection. What scripts are you still following? Ask yourself honestly. Who gave me my definition of success? What rules am I still obeying, even though I no longer believe in them? Where do I seek approval more than authenticity? What would it look like to choose differently, even if no one clapped? These are not surface-level questions. They go to the root. Because until you name the invisible curriculum, it will keep shaping you. A new education. What if adulthood isn't just about building a career, but unlearning the rules that no longer fit? What if real education begins after the diploma, when you start to choose your own lessons? You could learn how to befriend your uncertainty, how to define value on your own terms, how to build courage muscle by muscle, one honest decision at a time. You could stop asking what should I do, and start asking what do I want to learn next? Because you're not here to follow a script. You're here to write your own. Before you move on, spend 10 minutes reflecting on the following. What were you praised for most in school? What did that praise teach you to prioritize? Which of those priorities still serve you, and which feel like inherited pressure? If you could go back and talk to your 17-year-old self, what would you say? You may not be able to rewrite your past, but you can stop letting it dictate your future. We've spent these first chapters examining the roots of misalignment, the invisible forces that shaped your path. In the next chapter, we reach the breaking point, when success becomes unbearable and the cost of staying begins to outweigh the fear of leaving. It's called Success Without Satisfaction, and it marks the turning point in almost every reinvention story I've ever heard. Part 2. The breaking point, waking up inside the golden cage. At first, it looks like success. The job title, the salary, the applause. From the outside, everything adds up. But somewhere along the way, a quiet fracture begins to form. You start to feel it in the mornings, in the sigh before your alarm, in the tension behind your smile, in the question you're afraid to ask. Is this really my life? This part of the journey is not about failure. It's about awakening. Here, we explore the moment when external success no longer quiets internal unrest. When the roles we've mastered start to feel like costumes. When the cost of staying finally outweighs the fear of leaving. This is the breaking point, subtle, sacred, and often silent. Not everyone sees it. But if you do, it's the beginning of everything real. Chapter 5. Success Without Satisfaction. The Mirage of Arrival. There is a quiet ache that follows many high achievers. It creeps in not after failure, but after success. You've done everything right. Checked all the boxes. Earned the degree. Got the job. Hit the goals. Maybe you even surpassed them. And yet, something feels off. You look at your life and wonder, why don't I feel what I thought I would feel? This is the paradox of modern ambition. You arrive, but you don't arrive. The view from the top looks nothing like the promise. You're respected, maybe even envied. But deep down, you're asking questions that success was supposed to silence. Is this all there is? Why do I feel more numb than proud? Did I climb the wrong mountain? These questions are uncomfortable, especially when you're surrounded by people who see your life as aspirational. They don't see the dissonance. But you feel it. And that gap between your outer life and your inner truth becomes a kind of private suffering. The emotional hangover of achievement. Achievement has a strange way of playing with our psychology. We spend years striving, chasing, sacrificing. We tell ourselves that once we get there, we'll rest. We'll feel whole. We'll finally be enough. But when there comes and the emptiness remains, we panic. Or we double down. We chase the next goal, hoping it will fix the void the last one didn't. Promotions, pay raises, new titles, new cities, new companies. It works, briefly, until it doesn't. Success without satisfaction feels like standing in the spotlight while feeling invisible to yourself. The applause rings out, but you can't feel it. Because what you're really craving isn't more applause. It's authenticity. It's meaning. It's you. Real stories, real disconnection. Miguel, a senior architect in São Paulo, spent 15 years rising through the ranks. On paper, his life looked incredible. Six-figure salary, prestigious firm, international projects. But in a private coaching session, he confessed, "Every morning I sit in my car for 10 minutes before going into the office. I try to convince myself I still care. But the truth is, I don't know who I am anymore." Priya, a top marketing executive in Singapore, had similar echoes. "I feel guilty even saying this. I have everything I used to pray for. But something in me is flat. Like I'm living someone else's dream." Ethan, a well-respected software engineer in San Francisco, had always believed in the startup dream. Stock options. Disruption. Hustle. By age 30, he'd helped launch 2 companies and made more money than his parents had in their entire working lives. "I thought I'd feel free," he said. "But I've never felt more trapped. My calendar is packed, but my soul is vacant." Lena, a university professor in Germany, was celebrated in academic circles. Her research was cited globally. She mentored dozens of students. But at night, she would write short stories, fiction that no one ever saw. "It's the only time I feel like myself," she said. "I've built a career out of being smart, but I miss being alive." Jabori, a successful investment banker in Lagos, spent his weekends volunteering at a community arts center. "That's where I come alive," he shared. "But during the week, I put on the suit, and it feels like I'm performing a version of myself I don't recognize anymore." These aren't rare stories. They are the hidden reality behind many polished LinkedIn profiles. A 2023 McKinsey study found that over 25% of high performers reported being quietly disengaged, productive, but emotionally detached. These are people who are still doing well, but no longer feel well. The high cost of living out of alignment. When success doesn't align with self, it extracts a cost. Burnout that's not just physical, but existential. Anxiety masked as productivity. Perfectionism that drives performance but depletes joy. Apathy toward work that once excited you. Imposter syndrome, not because you aren't capable, but because the role feels foreign to your spirit. Over time, these symptoms harden. You lose access to your curiosity. Your relationships suffer. Your creativity withers. You might start to believe this is just adulthood, just how life feels when you're successful. But it's not adulthood. It's misalignment. Why it's so hard to admit. Success is supposed to be the destination. So when it doesn't feel like home, we question ourselves, not the map. We fear being ungrateful. We fear disappointing people. We fear starting over. But perhaps the real fear is this: if everything we built was based on who we thought we were supposed to be, what happens when we stop pretending? This is the identity crisis at the heart of modern ambition. It's not about lack of achievement. It's about losing ourselves in the achieving. The power of inner metrics. To shift from success without satisfaction to aligned living, we need new metrics. Not external, but internal. Not based on output, but on resonance. Try asking, what makes me feel alive, even if I'm not excellent at it yet? Where do I lose track of time in a good way? What part of my work gives me energy instead of draining it? Who am I when no one's watching? These aren't the kinds of questions career counselors usually ask. But they're the ones that matter most when you're seeking a life you can feel, not just explain. Micro decisions, macro shifts. You don't have to blow up your life to start finding satisfaction. It often begins with small, intentional decisions. Saying no to one project that drains you. Carving out 30 minutes a day for something that matters to you. Having one honest conversation you've been avoiding. Exploring one interest without needing it to be productive. These micro decisions create a ripple. They help you feel your life again. And from that place, bigger changes become possible, grounded not in desperation, but in clarity. Redefining arrival. What if success wasn't a place you arrive at, but a feeling you return to again and again? Not achievement without cost, but alignment without apology. Not perfection, but presence. You might still choose to lead. You might still earn well. But the why will be different. And so will the experience of your own life. Because the opposite of success isn't failure. It's disconnection. And the antidote isn't more striving. It's coming home to yourself. Before you move on, take a moment to reflect. What have you achieved that didn't feel the way you thought it would? What part of your current success feels empty? If you could design a version of success that feels like wholeness, what would be different? Write your answers down. Not for a plan. For the truth. Because the next step doesn't require certainty. It only requires honesty. And honesty is the beginning of satisfaction that actually lasts. Chapter 6. The Silent Crisis of High Achievers. The paradox of the peak. They're the ones everyone admires, the consistent performers, the driven professionals, the resilient leaders. On the surface, high achievers seem like they have it all figured out. They lead meetings, crush deadlines, raise families, earn promotions, and receive accolades. But behind the well-managed calendars and bulletproof resumes lies a truth that is rarely spoken. High achievers are often in quiet crisis. It's not always burnout. Sometimes, it's something subtler and more dangerous. A kind of emotional erosion. A soft, constant hum of disconnection. They don't necessarily hate what they do. They just don't feel anything anymore. And that absence of feeling is its own kind of suffering. Achievement as armor. For many high performers, achievement has long been a shield. From a young age, they were rewarded for being exceptional. Gold stars, high grades, glowing evaluations. Over time, this external validation became identity. The message was clear: you are valuable because you produce, because you perform, because you deliver. That identity is reinforced over years, by bosses, teachers, parents, and society at large. And so, high achievers learn to cope with discomfort by doing more. When something feels off, they fix it with effort. When something feels empty, they fill it with goals. When they feel unworthy, they work harder. But there comes a point where effort stops working. Where doing more no longer brings clarity or peace. That's when the crisis begins. The silent symptoms. Unlike classic burnout, which often arrives with exhaustion and collapse, the crisis of high achievers is more invisible. It hides in plain sight. Emotional numbness. You go through your day on autopilot. Nothing's wrong, but nothing feels right either. Success shame. You feel guilty for feeling unfulfilled. People admire you. You should be grateful. Identity confusion. You've built a persona around being competent, but you're unsure who you are without the role. Chronic overfunctioning. You handle everything, sometimes at the cost of your own well-being. Disconnection from joy. You can't remember the last time you felt lit up by your work. It's a crisis made more difficult by the fact that it's hard to name. After all, everything looks fine. You're not failing. You're just fading. Real people, quiet pain. Sarah, a pediatric surgeon in Canada, had one of the most respected jobs in her field. She saved lives. She was featured in journals. But behind her polished exterior was a different story. I haven't felt joy in 5 years, she said. I do my job well. But I feel like a ghost with a scalpel. Tunde, a senior software architect in Nigeria, spent 12 years rising up the tech ladder. His team loved him. His pay was excellent. But he felt like he was slowly vanishing. I don't know when it started, he shared, but one day I realized I couldn't remember what I cared about. I just knew what I was good at. Rebecca, an award-winning journalist in London, kept hitting career milestones but noticed an internal decay. It was like watching myself from a distance. I could write about other people's truths but had lost touch with my own. Zhao, a management consultant in Hong Kong, was known for working 80-hour weeks without complaint. But after a health scare, he confessed, I was more afraid of being irrelevant than of dying. These stories are not about failure. They are about disconnection. The kind that happens not because you fell behind, but because you ran too far ahead, without stopping to ask if the direction still made sense. Why high achievers are prone to crisis. 1. They rarely pause. High performers are often rewarded for moving fast and doing more. Pausing feels counterproductive. But without space, there is no self-reflection. 2. They confuse productivity with worth. When your identity is tied to output, rest feels like laziness. You forget that you matter beyond what you produce. 3. They wear the mask well. because they're competent, people assume they're fine. That assumption creates isolation. 4. They avoid vulnerability. Admitting misalignment feels like weakness. They internalize their discomfort instead of expressing it. 5. They fear letting others down. Their success often supports families, communities, or teams. Leaving or even questioning the path feels selfish. The role of perfectionism and imposter syndrome. Underneath the polished surface of many high achievers lies a cocktail of perfectionism and imposter syndrome. They set impossibly high standards for themselves, then worry they're never good enough. This creates a toxic loop. Do more to feel enough. Achieve more but still feel inadequate. Repeat until collapse. This isn't ambition. It's self-erasure disguised as excellence. A case for redefining resilience. True resilience isn't about pushing through at any cost. It's about knowing when to stop, when to rest, when to realign. We need a new model of strength, one that allows for softness, self-inquiry, and course correction. High achievers don't need more goals. They need more truth. The courage to feel again. The first step in healing this silent crisis is not quitting your job or changing your entire life. It's allowing yourself to feel what you've been suppressing. The grief of goals that didn't fulfill you. The confusion about who you've become. The desire for something different. Naming the disconnection is the beginning of Reconnect Ion. Small openings, big shifts. Recovery doesn't start with a dramatic change. It starts with a whisper of honesty. Journaling for 10 minutes about how you really feel. Taking one afternoon off without guilt. Talking to a friend without the mask on. Saying I don't know instead of pretending you do. These tiny choices signal to your nervous system that safety doesn't come from performance. It comes from presence. Building a life beyond the mask. When high achievers begin to reconnect with their true selves, surprising things happen. A lawyer starts painting again and feels joy for the first time in years. A CEO takes a sabbatical and redefines leadership as service, not status. A doctor becomes a mental health advocate, using their platform to foster healing. They don't lose their skills. They reclaim their soul. Before you move on, ask yourself, what part of me have I been hiding behind competence? What would it look like to succeed without pretending? If I could be deeply honest with one person, what would I say? You don't have to abandon your ambition. You just have to let your humanity lead again. Because the world doesn't need more perfect performers. It needs more whole people, starting with you. Chapter 7. When you can't just quit. The fantasy of the exit. Walk away. Start over. Follow your bliss. It sounds romantic, and for some, it's a real option. But for many others, quitting isn't a choice made in a vacuum. It's tethered to responsibilities, realities, and relationships. When your income supports your parents, your partner, or your children, or when your visa, healthcare, or student loans depend on your job, leaving is not just hard. It feels impossible. This chapter is for everyone who has ever whispered, "I want out," but then immediately followed it with, "but I can't." The myth of instant reinvention. Social media celebrates bold exits, the burned bridges, the viral resignation letters, the triumphant leap into a new life. But what these stories often leave out is the privilege that underwrites them. The safety net. The savings. The lack of dependence. The healthy body. The absence of trauma. Real life is messier. People stay in misaligned roles not because they're weak, but because they're responsible. Because they're scared. Because they're human. This chapter is not about glorifying stuckness. It's about validating reality while building the path out. It's also about reclaiming power in the smallest of decisions, and honoring the courage it takes to stay while choosing not to stay silent. Facing reality with compassion. Some people feel stuck because they are genuinely carrying a high burden of responsibility. When your job is the financial backbone for your family, or when you're the primary caregiver, or when leaving means losing a visa or health benefits, the fantasy of walking away can feel like a betrayal. But staying doesn't have to mean surrendering your dreams. Even when you can't quit, you can shift. Not everything has to be a leap. Sometimes, it starts with a whisper, the smallest, quietest decision to start moving toward something more aligned. We must make space for nuance. The person who wants to pivot but can't, the person who loves their family but longs for autonomy, the person who is grateful yet exhausted. These complexities matter. They are where real change begins. Real people, real barriers. Fatima, a teacher in Morocco, supports both her parents and 2 younger siblings. Even if I wanted to leave, she said, my salary feeds 5 mouths. I feel selfish even thinking about change. Andre, an immigrant nurse in New York, is tied to his job because of his work visa. He told me, I know this isn't my calling, but quitting means leaving the country. It feels like I signed a contract with no exit clause. Maya, a single mother in the Philippines, works in corporate HR. Her job drains her, but she relies on it for her daughter's tuition and her father's medical bills. Everyone depends on me. I don't get to have a dream. Lars, an operations manager in Sweden, found himself in a similar situation after his wife became ill. I used to want to start a design studio. Now, every extra hour I have is spent caring for her or picking up side work to cover the gap. Some days I forget what my own voice sounds like. These are not excuses. These are truths. They remind us that context matters, that responsibility is real, and that sacrifice should never erase selfhood. Shifting within limits. You don't need total freedom to begin reclaiming your alignment. Even within tight constraints, you can make micromovements that lead to larger change. Start by reclaiming a sliver of time. 1 hour a week for something that lights you up, a class, a journal, a hobby. Expand your circle by talking to people in fields you admire. Build small bridges through side projects, volunteering, or freelance work. Invest in yourself, even modestly, through books, online courses, or personal development. Remember, change doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be deliberate and consistent. Even the smallest step toward truth can shift your relationship with your own life. Take Rita, for example. A dentist in Johannesburg, she couldn't leave her clinic because of a loan and family obligations. But she began attending evening writing workshops. Within a year, she was publishing short essays under a pen name. That hour each day gave me my soul back, she said. Progress isn't always loud. When you can't just quit, it's easy to believe that nothing is changing. But progress can be quiet. It can look like finally admitting you're not fulfilled. It can look like having an honest conversation with your partner. It can look like asking for a different project or shifting a boundary. Progress can also be emotional. Feeling anger that you used to suppress, allowing grief to surface, or learning how to say I don't know without shame. If a decision brings you closer to yourself, it counts. Even if no one else sees it. Redefining responsibility. High responsibility roles often come with the belief that self-sacrifice is noble. But constantly abandoning your own needs for others is not sustainable. Over time, it leads to resentment, burnout, and disconnection. What if true responsibility included yourself? What if modeling alignment helped your children, students, or community members imagine it for themselves? What if choosing your well-being was not an act of selfishness, but of leadership? True responsibility means sustaining the person who holds the roles. Without you, the system around you fractures anyway. Taking care of yourself isn't neglecting your duty, it's reinforcing it. What if it never changes? Some people live in long-term constraint, chronic illness, systemic oppression, extreme financial pressure. If your situation feels immovable, the work becomes more internal. Can you rehumanize your current role in small ways? Can you cultivate moments of joy outside of work? Can you give yourself permission to grieve? Can you trust that your worth is not conditional on reinvention? Jorge, a call center agent in Manila, began ending each shift by playing his guitar. He couldn't afford to change jobs, but he could end his day on his own terms. That music, he said, reminds me I'm not just a headset and a script. Sometimes, freedom begins not with an exit but with a quiet act of truth-telling. This hurts. And that truth becomes a doorway. You are not alone. There is no shame in staying. Only in silence. This chapter is not asking you to be reckless. It's inviting you to be real. Start with what is possible. A moment. A boundary. A breath of honesty. Because even if you can't leave today, you can stop pretending that staying doesn't cost you anything. And that awareness is the beginning of your next chapter. Before you move on, ask yourself, what are the real constraints I'm navigating? What small shifts are actually available to me right now? What have I been telling myself is impossible, that might not be, in some small way? You don't have to quit today. But you do deserve to stop pretending you're okay when you're not. Because even if you can't change everything yet, you can change how you hold it. Chapter 8. Microburnouts and mini wake-ups. The subtle signals we miss. Not all burnouts come with dramatic collapse. Some arrive quietly, like erosion. You don't faint at your desk or scream at your boss. You just slowly stop caring. You become a quieter version of yourself, less vibrant, less curious, less alive. And yet, you keep showing up. You perform. You smile. You meet deadlines. This is what we call microburnout. It doesn't make headlines, but it makes life heavy. It creeps in on a Tuesday afternoon when the thought of another meeting feels like an anchor. It lingers on weekends when you can't enjoy rest because your body is stuck in performance mode. It whispers, maybe this is just who I am now, when who you are is quietly slipping out the back door. But just as there are microburnouts, there are also mini wake-ups. Glimpses of clarity. Sparks of aliveness. Tiny moments when the fog lifts, and for a split second, you remember yourself. This chapter is about noticing both, and using those moments not as judgments, but as guideposts. What microburnout feels like. Microburnouts are insidious because they're often socially accepted. In fact, they're sometimes praised. You're still productive. You're still reliable. You haven't crashed, so no one checks in. But inside, you know something is off. Signs might include apathy toward things you used to enjoy, emotional flatness or irritability, chronic fatigue that rest doesn't fix, quiet dread before the workday begins, escapism, scrolling, binging, zoning out. These signs don't always scream, but they signal misalignment. Real stories, subtle warnings. Amira, a project manager in Dubai, started noticing that she could no longer celebrate her team's wins. I used to feel proud, she said. Now I just feel tired. Even the good news feels like a task. Leo, a social worker in Toronto, realized something was wrong when he stopped listening to music on his commute. I just couldn't take in any more noise, he said. I thought I was fine until I noticed I hadn't laughed in weeks. Sophia, a fashion buyer in Milan, found herself crying on random Wednesdays. Not because anything happened. Just because nothing changed. David, a startup founder in Tel Aviv, realized he hadn't seen a sunset in over a year. I was building a product to help people live better. Meanwhile, I forgot how to live. Nina, a high school principal in Nairobi, felt herself turning emotionally cold. I didn't even notice until a student gave me a handmade card and I felt nothing. That scared me. Tariq, an engineer in Berlin, noticed he had started dreading weekends. Not because I was bored, but because I knew Monday would come again and I hadn't done anything that mattered to me. Zainab, a pharmacist in Kuala Lumpur, said she felt invisible. My patients see me as helpful, my boss sees me as efficient. But I haven't seen myself in years. Carlos, a civil servant in Madrid, said he lost track of time not because he was in flow, but because every day felt the same. Each morning I wake up with a weight. Not dread. Just dullness. Mina, a UX designer in Seoul, realized she hadn't drawn anything for fun in 2 years. I went into design because I loved creativity. Now I just follow guidelines. These are not breakdowns. They are breakdowns in slow motion. The wake-up sparks. Mini wake-ups often appear unannounced. You're walking, and a bird sings. You talk to an old friend and feel seen. You help someone and remember what you care about. These moments don't last long, but they hold deep truth. A mini wake-up can be a podcast episode that makes you cry, a task that energizes you instead of depleting you, a memory that surfaces and makes you pause, a compliment that hits deeper than expected, a sense of this isn't it that you can't unhear. Layla, a corporate lawyer in London, experienced one during a pottery class. I hadn't touched clay since I was 10. For 2 hours, I forgot my title, my phone, everything. I felt human again. Marcus, a chef in Atlanta, got a wake-up while coaching his niece's soccer game. I realized I smiled more in that 1 hour than I had in my kitchen in months. Aiko, a customer service rep in Tokyo, felt one while journaling for the first time in years. I reread my words and thought, she's still in there. I still exist. Demoris, an auditor in Nairobi, said hers came during a spontaneous karaoke night. I hadn't sung in public in a decade. That moment reminded me I still have joy inside me. Rafael, a warehouse supervisor in Rio de Janeiro, described a walk through his childhood neighborhood. Something about seeing the tree I used to climb made me realize I want to feel that free again. Your only job is to notice them. Not fix your life in response, but just notice. Because noticing is how truth begins. Why we miss the signs. Modern work culture trains us to ignore subtle signals. We valorize hustle and pathologize rest. We numb instead of feel. And when we do feel, we explain it away. I'm just tired. It's just a busy season. I should be grateful. Gratitude doesn't erase exhaustion. It doesn't cancel out misalignment. You can be thankful and still need change. Building the muscle of noticing. The antidote to microburnout isn't always quitting your job or moving to Bali. Often, it starts with attention. Keep a joy log for a week, note what gives you energy, what drains it. Set a 3-minute timer each evening to ask yourself, where did I feel most alive today? Practice naming your feelings, even if you don't act on them. Start conversations with what lit you up this week, instead of how's work? These aren't solutions. They're resensitizations. Turning wake-ups into compass points. When you notice a mini wake-up, ask, what did this moment teach me about what I value? What am I doing, and who am I with, when I feel most like myself? What might my exhaustion be trying to tell me? You don't need to act right away. But collecting this data over time will clarify patterns, what to move toward, what to move away from. Restoring the connection. Microburnouts disconnect you from yourself. Mini wake-ups reconnect you. The more you honor both, the more whole you become. Not all change starts with a crisis. Some of it begins with a whisper, this isn't working. Or, this felt good. More, please. And that whisper becomes the first step back to yourself. Before you move on, take 5 minutes. Ask, what was one microburnout moment I had this week? What was one mini wake-up? What might these moments be asking of me? You don't need to change your whole life. You just need to start listening more closely to it. Because noticing is the seed of all reinvention. Part 3. Realignment, strategic, soulful reinvention. Once you see the misalignment, the question becomes, now what? This section is about the path forward, not through chaos or impulsive leaps, but through conscious, courageous redesign. Realignment doesn't mean burning everything down. It means asking better questions. What energizes me? What can I carry forward? What do I need to unlearn to build a life that fits? Here, we shift from reflection to movement. You'll explore tools for reconnecting with your inner compass, making practical pivots, and sustaining change even when it's messy or slow. Not all reinvention is dramatic. Some of it looks like tiny bold moves, quiet boundary setting, or reimagining the skills you already have. Because the goal isn't just to escape the old story. It's to write a new one, with clarity, integrity, and joy. Chapter 9. Reclaiming your inner compass. There comes a moment in every journey of misalignment when the maps we were given no longer lead anywhere meaningful. The goals that once sparkled with promise now feel empty. The accomplishments that earned applause leave us numb. The ladder we were climbing turns out to be leaning against the wrong wall. And in that moment, we are left with a question that is both terrifying and liberating. What now? This is the moment we must reclaim our inner compass. Unlike maps, which show predefined routes, a compass doesn't dictate a path. It points to a direction, an orientation based on something deeper, something true. Reclaiming your inner compass is about reconnecting with the subtle signals of desire, energy, curiosity, and truth that you may have ignored, silenced, or forgotten in your pursuit of being successful. It requires listening to yourself again, honestly, without the noise of expectation. The disappearance of direction. Most people don't lose their way in a single dramatic moment. It happens gradually. You follow what seems sensible. You make the responsible choice. You do what you're praised for. You accept the job offer that pays well. You say yes to the promotion. You keep showing up, even when your soul stops arriving with you. Over time, the internal compass that once buzzed with feeling grows quiet. At first, you call it stress. Then you call it adulthood. Eventually, you don't call it anything. It becomes background noise, a low-grade ache that you assume is just part of life. But buried beneath all that noise is still a signal. And it can be heard, if you slow down enough to listen. How we lost it. To understand how to reclaim your inner compass, you have to understand how it was lost in the first place. It often begins early. Socialization. As children, we were praised for being obedient more than being original. We learned to chase gold stars instead of intuition. Schooling. Standardized tests taught us there was one right answer, one right path, and that our worth was tied to performance. Family expectations. For many of us, career choices were community projects. To question the path was to question your belonging. Economic pressures. In a world where rent is due and debt is real, many of us learned to choose survival over satisfaction. None of these forces are inherently evil. But collectively, they taught us to prioritize external approval over internal alignment. Over time, our inner compass didn't just get quiet, we stopped trusting it. The 4 anchors of your inner compass. Reclaiming your inner compass doesn't mean burning your life down. It means recalibrating around 4 central anchors. 1. Desire. What do you want more of in your life? 2. Direction. Where do you feel pulled, even if it makes no logical sense? 3. Energy. What gives you life? What depletes you? 4. Expression. Where do you feel most like yourself? These questions are not about instant answers. They're about building a practice of noticing. Your compass doesn't shout. It whispers. Your job is to make enough quiet in your life to hear it. Listening for signals. If you want to find your way again, you need to start listening. That might mean journaling in the mornings, or walking without a podcast, or paying attention to what makes you jealous, because jealousy is often a clue, not a character flaw. Look for microsignals. You lose track of time while doing something. A friend mentions a job or hobby and something stirs in your chest. You feel drained after one kind of task but alive after another. These aren't trivial moments. They're data points. They are your compass trying to speak. Practices to reconnect. Here are some tangible ways to begin rebuilding that connection. The joy versus duty log. For 1 week, write down everything you do each day. Then mark each activity as either joy or duty. Over time, you'll start to see patterns. The compass board. Instead of a vision board, make a collage or digital board of things that evoke curiosity, longing, energy, and calm. Don't focus on career titles, focus on resonance. Energy audit. At the end of each day, ask, what gave me energy? What drained me? Do this for 10 days and you'll begin to notice what aligns with your natural rhythms. Curiosity dates. Take yourself on a weekly date with something that intrigues you, a class, a museum, a lecture, a meetup group. Not because it makes sense, because it sparks. Desire mapping. Write down your answers to this question. If I didn't have to be good at it, what would I try? Real people, real rediscovery. Consider these short stories from people who followed their inner compass, not to perfection, but to presence. Elena, a nurse in Spain, realized she didn't miss medicine, she missed teaching. She now runs oral health workshops in schools, combining knowledge with her passion for education. Jules, a burnt-out consultant in the US, started painting again. She didn't quit her job, but she reclaimed her creativity, and that changed everything. Ravi, a developer in India, joined a local theatre group after years of isolation. Acting made me feel real again, he said. Like I could be anyone, even myself. Layla, a lawyer in London, found peace in a pottery class. It became her sacred hour each week to remember who she was before titles defined her. Samar, an investment banker in Dubai, took over his firm's mentorship program. Teaching new analysts lit something up in me, he said. It reminded me why I started. Fatima, a dentist in Cairo, found fulfillment teaching kids about dental hygiene through storytelling and skits. I still use my degree, she said, but now it feels joyful. Luis, a finance manager in Mexico City, picked up his old guitar and started weekend jam sessions with friends. It's not about performing, he said. It's about remembering myself. Jonah, a policy advisor in Australia, started photographing birds on weekend hikes. It makes me feel wonder again, he said. That feeling had been missing for years. Aiko, a customer support agent in Japan, revived her love for calligraphy after attending a community class. It helped me see beauty again, in my life, not just the page. These are not fairy tale reinventions. They are real people following breadcrumbs of alignment back to themselves. You don't have to have a plan. This is one of the most important truths of the inner compass. It doesn't give you a 5-year plan. It gives you a direction, a nudge, an impulse, a flicker. Following your compass might mean starting a newsletter about something you care about, taking a weekend course in herbalism, fiction writing, UX design, talking to someone whose life you admire, saying no to a draining obligation. You are not choosing a new identity. You are choosing to trust yourself again. When it feels scary. Let's be clear, following your inner compass will feel uncomfortable. Especially if you've spent years overriding it. It will bring up fear. What if I'm wrong? What if I waste time? Guilt. Am I being selfish for wanting something more? Doubt. Who am I to try this? These emotions are not signs that you're off track. They are signs that you're alive. That you're waking up. The compass doesn't eliminate fear. It helps you move with it. Integration, not escape. Realignment isn't always about quitting or escaping. Sometimes, it's about integration. About bringing more of your real self into your current world. Maybe you infuse more creativity into your work. Maybe you reclaim mornings for yourself. Maybe you start speaking more honestly in your relationships. Small acts of alignment have exponential effects. They build a life that feels like yours again. Before you move on, take 10 minutes. Reflect on these questions. When was the last time I felt fully alive? What activities make me feel energized, even when they're hard? What am I curious about that I haven't let myself explore? If no one were watching, what would I do differently? Write your answers without judgment. Let them be messy. Let them be true. Because your compass can only guide you if you stop pretending you're lost. Final thought. You are not broken. You are not late. You are not failing because you don't have it all figured out. You are simply standing at a crossroad, the one where outer success no longer satisfies inner truth. You don't need a map. You need to listen. And then begin. Because your inner compass is still there. And it's pointing home. Chapter 10. The Strategic Pivot. After you begin listening to your inner compass, the next question often becomes, how do I turn this into movement? Not everyone can, or should, drop everything and leap into the unknown. Real change doesn't have to be dramatic to be powerful. It just has to be strategic. And that's where the pivot comes in. A pivot is a conscious, calibrated shift toward alignment. It's not about blowing up your life. It's about building a bridge from where you are to where you want to go. Step by step. Brick by brick. With intention, clarity, and enough stability to sustain the journey. What a strategic pivot is, and what it isn't. A strategic pivot is rooted in self-awareness, guided by energy and alignment, respectful of your current constraints, built to be gradual and grounded. A strategic pivot is not a reckless leap without a net. A rejection of everything you've done so far. A midlife crisis masquerading as clarity. An impulsive act to escape discomfort. The point of a pivot is to evolve, not implode. To make a plan that honors your truth and your responsibilities. The strategic pivot ladder. Think of your pivot as a ladder. Each rung represents a phase of movement, from curiosity to full transition. 1. Notice. Start by recognizing where misalignment shows up. 2. Explore. Follow your curiosity. What lights you up? What would you try if it weren't risky? 3. Experiment. Run small tests. Take classes, shadow someone, do a freelance project. 4. Prepare, skill up. Build a financial cushion. Strengthen your network. 5. Transition. Shift into part-time, freelance, or bridge roles. 6. Sustain. Design systems that help you thrive in your new alignment. Each step can take weeks or months. What matters is that you keep climbing. Real people, real pivots. Carlos, an architect in Chile, started feeling dead inside after 10 years in high-end design. He didn't quit outright. Instead, he volunteered with a non-profit that built low-income housing. That experience clarified his next move, launching his own socially conscious design firm. Dina, a corporate executive in Canada, was drawn to wellness. She started teaching yoga on weekends. Over 2 years, she reduced her hours at work, got certified as a coach, and now runs retreats blending leadership and mindfulness. Emeka, an accountant in Nigeria, loved storytelling. He began writing on LinkedIn, gained a following, and was soon ghostwriting part-time for executives. Within 18 months, writing became his main income source. Rosa, a pharmacist in Argentina, began to notice how much she enjoyed helping customers understand lifestyle changes more than dispensing medication. She pivoted into public health education, and now runs a YouTube channel focused on accessible health literacy. Ahmed, a mechanical engineer in Egypt, joined a robotics club as a mentor. He discovered a love for teaching and eventually transitioned into a full-time STEM educator for teens. Claire, a sales executive in France, always felt alive while writing. She started a Substack newsletter and landed freelance content gigs before shifting into brand storytelling full-time. Hiroshi, a systems analyst in Japan, started a podcast on emotional intelligence after his own burnout. He now facilitates workshops on tech and empathy across Asia. Talia, a middle school teacher in New York, found herself drawn to instructional design. She started freelancing for edtech platforms and eventually became a full-time UX instructional consultant. Isaac, a commercial pilot in South Africa, began filming his travels and grew a loyal YouTube audience. Over time, his channel became a full-time venture combining aviation education and cultural storytelling. Planning your pivot. Here are some key elements to map out. 1. Clarity of direction. What are you moving toward, and why? What values are driving this pivot? How do you define success now? 2. Financial readiness. How much buffer do you need to explore a new path? What are your current expenses? Can you downsize, freelance, or build a bridge income? 3. Skill inventory. What skills do you already have that transfer? What new skills will you need? How can you begin learning them on the side? 4. Support system. Who will champion this change? Mentors, peers, coaches, friends. Emotional support plus practical help. 5. Boundaries and burnout prevention. How will you protect your energy during the transition? What will you say no to? How will you track alignment versus obligation? Common pivoter pitfalls. Waiting for certainty. Clarity grows through action. Comparing timelines. Your path isn't late. It's yours. Chasing prestige. Align with purpose, not applause. Doing it all alone. Ask for help. Let others support you. Small moves, big shifts. You don't need to quit your job to start pivoting. You can begin today by sending a message to someone in a field you admire, signing up for a 1-hour online workshop, asking for a stretch project that aligns with your passion, spending 30 minutes a week building your dream on the side. Momentum builds through movement. Before you move on, grab a journal or your notes app and answer. What does a pivot look like for me right now? What's one experiment I can run in the next 30 days? Who do I need to talk to? What's the cost of staying exactly where I am? Final thought. You don't have to leap. You don't have to burn bridges. You just have to take the next step. Strategic pivots are how reinvention becomes reality. Not through chaos, but through courage. One small move at a time. Chapter 11. Surviving while you shift. The pivot sounds powerful in theory. But what about in practice? What about when the bills don't stop coming, your kids need dinner, your job still demands 40+ hours, and your energy is already running low? This chapter is for the in-betweeners, the brave souls walking the path of change while still carrying the weight of responsibility. Because shifting toward a new life doesn't always feel inspiring. Sometimes it feels exhausting, uncertain, and lonely. And yet, it's possible to survive, and even grow, while you're in the middle. The emotional terrain of transition. The shift doesn't just challenge your schedule, it shakes your identity. You're letting go of old roles, routines, and definitions of success, but the new version of you isn't fully formed yet. This liminal space can trigger imposter syndrome. Who am I to try this? Grief, mourning the version of life you're releasing. Fear of failure, judgment, or regret. Isolation, feeling like no one understands your process. Acknowledging these emotions is not a sign of weakness, it's a mark of courage. Emotional regulation is survival fuel. This middle stage can last months or even years. It's marked by doubt, experimentation, tension between old obligations and new desires. Most people quit here, not because they're lazy, but because they feel alone. They think they're doing it wrong. But this is the nature of transition. It's messy, personal, and non-linear. The identity maintenance plan. You're not just building new skills, you're maintaining a fragile sense of self. Here's how to support your evolving identity. 1. Anchor in values. When everything feels in flux, revisit what's constant. Create a short mantra. I value freedom, curiosity, and contribution. 2. Micro-rituals. Light a candle before writing. Walk the same route after work. Journal for 5 minutes each morning. Small rituals stabilize big changes. 3. Safe mirrors. Spend time with people who reflect your becoming, not just your past. Choose community that affirms growth. 4. Celebrate microwins. Did you send one email to a new connection? Finish a free course. Journal for 3 days straight. Celebrate it. Progress, not perfection. 5. Name the season. Don't call it a crisis. Call it a pivot, a realignment, a healing. Language matters. 6. Create a to-feel list. Each day, jot down how you want to feel. Calm, brave, energized. Then plan one action to help you access that emotion. Real people, real struggles, real resilience. Jorge, a civil engineer in Brazil, began taking night courses in environmental science after his job began to feel meaningless. Between work, kids, and studying, he felt overwhelmed, but reminded himself that building slowly is still building. After 3 years, he moved into sustainability consulting. Maya, a corporate HR lead in Singapore, started exploring coaching on weekends. She doubted herself often, but kept a tiny triumphs journal where she logged every encouraging message from clients. That journal became her emotional anchor on hard days. Tarek, a doctor in Lebanon, began to feel disconnected from his hospital work. He volunteered 1 weekend a month at a rural clinic and slowly discovered that he wanted to shift into community health. It took 4 years, but now he works in public policy. Annika, a freelance writer in Germany, took a temp job in retail to pay the bills while building her design portfolio. I felt embarrassed at first, she said, but that job gave me the breathing room to create without fear. Today she runs a boutique branding studio. Ravi, a marketing specialist in India, worked 9 to 5 while waking up at 5 a.m. to write fiction. He published 1 short story per month for a year. By the end of year 2, he landed a publishing deal. Sophie, a teacher in Australia, took a leave of absence and moved back in with her parents to train as a mental health counselor. It was humbling, but necessary. I traded pride for purpose. Chen, a warehouse manager in Taiwan, used lunch breaks to study programming. After 8 months of self-teaching and project building, he landed a junior developer role. Lena, a restaurant manager in the US, experienced chronic burnout. She began doing early morning yoga and journaling every evening, building a slow return to her core self. She eventually became a wellness coach for others in high-stress industries. Isa, a stay-at-home parent in Kenya, began taking online courses in finance and bookkeeping. She now runs a small business helping local entrepreneurs manage their budgets and taxes. Khaled, a former army officer in Jordan, transitioned into conflict mediation and peacebuilding. He started by volunteering part-time while working a desk job. Today he facilitates workshops across the region. Selin, a tech recruiter in Turkey, was emotionally exhausted. She joined a peer support circle for career changes and says it literally saved me from quitting everything. Now she leads retreats for professionals in transition. Fatou, an admin in Senegal, secretly dreamed of opening a bakery. She started testing recipes in her tiny kitchen and posting on Instagram. Within a year, she was selling cakes on weekends, and within 3, opened a physical storefront. Managing energy like a CEO. During a pivot, your most precious asset is not time, it's energy. Learn to track energy gains and drains daily. Use emojis or color coding if needed. Batch your creative work during your most focused hours. Protect your mornings for what matters most, even 20 minutes. Say no to one thing a week that doesn't align. Unplug regularly from digital noise. Create pockets of silence. Burnout doesn't just come from doing too much, it comes from too much disconnection. Align your energy with what fuels your soul. Financial survival while you shift. It's hard to dream when you're drowning. You don't need wealth to change, you need runway. That means creating a pivot budget, know your bare minimum and desired buffer. Downsizing temporarily, make space for growth. Freelancing or moonlighting, use skills to fund your shift. Exploring grants, sabbaticals, or part-time options, get creative with support. Automating savings, even small deposits build momentum. A career change doesn't have to be an all-or-nothing leap. It can be a slow, steady glide. Navigating relationships during transition. Your pivot will ripple into your relationships. Some will cheer. Some will fear. Some won't get it at all. Communicate with compassion. Share your why. Let them into your story. Set boundaries. I can't take that on right now. Find new allies. Join spaces that reflect where you're going. Educate loved ones. Share podcasts, books, or articles that inspired your pivot. Release roles. You don't have to be who they remember. You're allowed to evolve. You don't owe anyone an apology for evolving. But you can offer them understanding. Create a stability stack. In chaotic seasons, stability doesn't come from control, it comes from intentional rhythms. Build your stack. Emotional, weekly therapy, meditation, or support circles. Physical, consistent meals, movement, sleep routines. Mental, input that inspires, books, podcasts, learning. Relational, one honest check-in a week with someone safe. Spiritual, time in nature, prayer, journaling, or you don't have to do it all, just stack a few layers consistently. Before you move on, ask yourself, what part of my identity feels most fragile right now? What's one energy drain I can release this week? Who sees the version of me I'm becoming? What tiny ritual could help anchor me this month? Where am I holding on out of fear instead of faith? Final thought. Survival is sacred. Don't let hustle culture trick you into thinking transformation only counts if it's fast and flashy. Sometimes survival is success. Sometimes showing up for one more day is momentum. You are already shifting. And you are doing it bravely. Even if no one sees it yet. Even if you're tired. Even if you're scared. You are not stuck. You are becoming. And that is more than enough. Chapter 12, Experiments in Becoming. Before a reinvention becomes your reality, it must first become your experiment. Too many people stay stuck waiting for clarity when what they need is curiosity. Not a perfect plan, but a small step. Experiments in becoming are about trying on new versions of yourself without the pressure to commit forever. They're not about massive leaps. They're about small, brave nudges into possibility. If survival is the bridge and the pivot is the plan, then experiments are the spark. Why experiments matter? Most people don't suffer from lack of passion. They suffer from fear of failure. They think, what if I make the wrong choice? So they freeze. But experiments remove the pressure of permanence. They ask only one thing: try. Experiments matter because they offer data, not just dreams. They lower the risk of regret. They build confidence through action. They give your inner compass feedback. They let you become a beginner again. They allow for joy without commitment. They unlock possibility without pressure. Trying doesn't mean failing. Trying means you're alive to growth. The rules of experimentation. 1. Make it reversible. It should be low stakes. 2. Keep it short. Try it for a week, a month, or a season. 3. Track how you feel. Notice energy, flow, dread, joy. 4. Detach from outcome. The goal is insight, not success. 5. Honor the try. You're not failing, you're gathering data. 6. Stay curious. Judgment kills experimentation. 7. Repeat if needed. Sometimes the first trial is a warm-up. Real people, real experiments. Noah, an IT specialist in Belgium, joined a Saturday Improved group. He didn't plan to be a comedian, he just wanted to feel more alive. 6 months later, he had better communication at work and a stronger sense of self. Farida, a teacher in Morocco, launched a weekly Instagram Live where she discussed her favorite novels. Over time, she gained an audience and now runs a literary podcast. Kwame, an analyst in Ghana, shadowed a non-profit founder on weekends. He didn't quit finance, but the experience helped him start his own foundation on the side. Lena, a nurse in Sweden, started volunteering with a climate advocacy group. That one experiment led to her pursuing a master's in environmental health. Mateo, a barista in Colombia, began selling handmade ceramics at a street market once a month. Within a year, he turned it into a side business. Tanya, a project manager in Canada, hosted a Sunday Zoom circle for people going through career shifts. It became her passion and now informs her future coaching business. Aliyah, a customer service agent in the UAE, joined an online film editing course. She created short travel videos from family footage. Now she freelances part-time as a video editor. Ben, a lawyer in the US, began leading hiking trips for local groups. It combined his love of nature and leadership. He now runs retreats focused on nature-based stress recovery. Keiko, a business analyst in Japan, committed to drawing for 15 minutes a day. Over time, she created a visual storytelling portfolio and began illustrating educational content. Junaid, a retail manager in Pakistan, recorded daily voice memos reflecting on his workday. Eventually, he turned those recordings into a podcast on meaningful work. Helena, a teacher in Portugal, began translating children's books in her spare time. One of her translations was picked up by a small press. Omar, a mechanical engineer in Egypt, started building small robots with his children. His weekend tinkering led to hosting free workshops at the local library. Marisol, a hotel receptionist in Spain, experimented with blogging about local history. Her posts caught the eye of a cultural tour company, and she now leads walking tours part-time. Daphne, a pharmacist in New Zealand, offered to run a mental health awareness workshop at her workplace. The feedback was so positive, she now facilitates regular sessions. Samuel, an IT technician in Nigeria, challenged himself to write one poem a week and publish it on Twitter. Within a year, he had grown a loyal following and was invited to perform at events. Ria, an administrative assistant in the Philippines, began baking on weekends and sharing her creations at work. Now she manages a small custom cake business on the side. These were not commitments. These were clues. Each one opened new doors. The Tiny Bold Moves framework. Use these as mini experiments to test your interests, values, or identity. Teach one thing you love to 3 people, live or recorded. Write publicly, a blog, a LinkedIn post, a Medium article. Volunteer in a role adjacent to your curiosity. Shadow someone for an afternoon or a project. Host a meetup or dinner around a shared interest. Make something, a logo, a sketch, a prototype, a menu. Reach out to a stranger doing what you admire. Take one class outside your comfort zone. Ask one brave question in your current role. Redesign your bio to reflect the version of you you're becoming. Pitch an idea to a community or workplace. Document your learning, blog, vlog, TikTok, newsletter. Start a tiny challenge, 30 days of sketches, languages, workouts, ideas. You don't need a new identity. You need new evidence. Designing your experiment. Ask, what am I curious about, but scared to try? What's the smallest possible version of that? How will I know if it gave me insight? What would it look like to try, not tie? Make your experiment specific. I'll volunteer at the animal shelter every Sunday in July. I'll publish 3 blog posts on creativity this month. I'll co-host a virtual workshop with a friend. I'll run a 7-day journaling challenge on Instagram. Track it. What surprised me? What drained me? What felt like flow? What do I want more of? When it doesn't work. Not every experiment will spark a new path. That's okay. Sometimes the experiment teaches you what you don't want. Sometimes it reveals a skill gap or a hidden fear. Sometimes it's just neutral. You're still ahead. Because trying gives you momentum. And momentum creates clarity. No experiment is wasted if it brings you closer to yourself. Before you move on, pick one. What's one experiment I could try in the next 30 days? Who can I invite to do it with me or cheer me on? What's my biggest fear? And what would I do if I weren't afraid? What's one skill I want to practice in a playful way? What identity am I curious about but haven't explored? Now schedule it. Put it on your calendar. Final thought. Becoming is not a blueprint. It's a series of brave, imperfect experiments. You don't need to be certain. You don't need to be ready. You just need to be willing. You are allowed to try things. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to explore who you are becoming. Try. And see what becomes. Part 4. Freedom, redefining success on your terms. Real freedom isn't just about leaving what no longer fits. It's about defining what does. In this section, we explore what it means to succeed on your own terms, not according to job titles, prestige, or other people's applause, but by alignment, meaning, and peace. This is where reinvention becomes identity, where nonlinear paths are no longer something to hide, but a source of strength, where the talents that once trapped you become tools for contribution. Here, you'll rethink success, not as a destination, but as a reflection of who you are becoming. Because fulfillment isn't found in climbing higher. It's found in choosing what you're climbing, and why. Chapter 13. The new definition of success. From prestige to peace, from CV to contribution. We were raised on a definition of success that came with metrics, salary, title, accolades, square footage, number of degrees, number of followers, number of hours worked. Success was external, measurable, public. It was what other people could see and what we could post about. And for a while, many of us believed it. We chased it. We contorted ourselves for it. We paid for it in time, energy, and sometimes health. We checked the boxes because we were told the boxes meant progress, achievement, arrival. But here's the truth we were never taught. You can win at the wrong game. You can have all the traditional markers of success and still feel empty. You can be praised and still be lost. You can be respected and still feel disconnected from yourself. And if that's true, if success doesn't guarantee peace, purpose, or joy, then maybe it's time to redefine it. Why the old definition no longer fits. The old definition of success was rooted in survival and scarcity. It made sense in a world where upward mobility was everything. Where your job wasn't just a paycheck, it was your worth, your safety, your family's pride. In many places, it still feels that way. And we honor that context. But the world has changed. And so have we. The pace of life is faster than ever. The cost of burnout is higher. Our definitions of work, value, and meaning are evolving. And a new generation, across geographies, genders, and generations, is asking different questions. What does it mean to live well? Who do I become when no one is watching? How do I define enough? This chapter is not about rejecting success. It's about reclaiming it. It's about moving from impressing others to expressing ourselves. From climbing ladders to planting gardens. From performing to belonging. The 4 old pillars of success. Let's name the architecture of the old success story. 1. Status. Your value is tied to prestige. Your career must be impressive, your choices must be legible to others. 2. Security. Your worth is tied to stability. Risk is indulgent. Comfort is everything. 3. Scarcity. There's only so much success to go around. Compete. Outperform. Stay ahead. 4. Self-sacrifice. Success requires suffering. Rest is laziness. You'll enjoy life later. These pillars built a society of high achievers and quiet misery. We internalized these values so deeply, many of us didn't realize we were building our lives according to someone else's blueprint. Until the cracks started to show. Until the success started to feel suspiciously like suffocation. Defining success on your own terms. A new definition doesn't start with slogans. It starts with questions. It starts when you pause long enough to ask, what truly matters to me? How do I want to feel when I wake up? What kind of relationships do I want to nourish? What do I want to give to the world, and what do I need to receive? What am I no longer willing to trade for approval? The answers won't come all at once. They'll come in fragments, on long walks, during honest conversations, in the moments when your body says yes before your brain catches up. But eventually, a different picture of success starts to take shape. And it might look like this. Working less but living more. Being present with your children, your art, or your body. Choosing meaningful work over prestigious work. Having fewer obligations, but more autonomy. Creating something you're proud of, even if it never goes viral. Real stories, real redefinitions. Let's look at a few real people who chose to redraw the map. Layla, former corporate strategist, mindfulness educator. I used to measure my worth by my PowerPoint decks. Now, I measure it by how calm I feel walking into a room. I don't make 6 figures anymore, but I make sense to myself. Arun, ex-lawyer, climate policy researcher. 4 years, success meant defending the biggest clients. Then I realized I was arguing for things I didn't believe in. Now I work with grassroots climate initiatives. I earn less. I feel more. Rachel, marketing exec artist. Painting used to be a hobby I was ashamed of. Now it's the centerpiece of my week. I may not be famous, but I feel connected, for the first time in decades. Talu, product manager, part-time consultant plus father. I thought I needed to keep pushing for that next role. But when my daughter was born, I felt a shift. I dropped to part-time, cut our expenses, and started actually being in her life, not just funding it. Their stories share a common truth. The cost of misalignment was higher than the cost of reinvention. The aligned success scorecard. Here's a radical idea. What if success wasn't measured by status, speed, or salary, but by how alive you feel? What if we stopped making decisions solely based on return on investment and started measuring return on fulfillment? This isn't just philosophical. It's practical. Because deep down, we all know when we're aligned, and when we're not. We just rarely slow down long enough to name it. So take a moment. Breathe. And ask yourself these 10 questions, not to judge, but to reflect. Think of each as a pulse check on your current version of success. Ask yourself, do I feel energized by my work more often than not? Do I feel safe being my full, authentic self in the environments I move through, whether professional, social, or personal? Am I proud of how I spend my time and energy, not just in terms of accomplishments, but in terms of alignment with what matters to me? Do I have room in my life for rest, relationships, and reflection? Or am I constantly running on empty? Am I showing up in life as a living, breathing human? Or am I performing a role I've outgrown? Do I define success through the lens of my values, or am I still chasing outcomes that no longer reflect who I am? Am I growing, not just upward, but inward, into someone I respect and recognize? Do I feel connected? To purpose? To people? To myself? Can I clearly name what matters to me, and am I making choices that honor it? And finally, if I had to walk away from this version of success, could I do it without losing who I am? Pause. Sit with your answers. Don't rush. Now, count how many of those questions you could confidently answer with a yes or a strong sense of truth. If it's most or all of them, you're likely living in deep alignment. Your inner compass is guiding your life well. If it's somewhere in the middle, you're close, but there may be areas quietly calling for your attention. If only a few feel true, you may be in a season of transition, where the old version of success is fading, but the new one hasn't fully arrived yet. And if none or almost none feel real to you, that's not failure. That's clarity. It means you've outgrown a life that once fit, and you're being invited to choose differently. This is not a diagnosis. It's a mirror. A moment of honest reflection about what your current version of success gives you, and what it costs. Because success, real success, shouldn't require abandoning yourself to achieve it. It should feel like coming home. What gets in the way? Even when we know we need a new definition of success, a few common blockers show up. 1. The ghost of prestige. You still hear the voice that says, "But will people respect this?" Reminder, you don't need to downgrade your life, just upgrade your alignment. 2. The scarcity script. You're afraid there's not enough time, money, or opportunity to make the shift. Reminder, small pivots now can open big doors later. Alignment pays long-term dividends. 3. Inherited expectations. Parents, cultures, institutions, so many forces have shaped what you believe is right. Reminder, love doesn't require conformity. Sometimes the most loving act is to evolve. 4. Perfectionism. You want the new version of success to be flawless before you commit. Reminder, reinvention is messy. Progress beats perfection. A new lexicon of success. In the old paradigm, success meant chasing titles. You were as valuable as the label next to your name. Now, we're learning to value integrity, the quiet satisfaction of doing work that aligns with who we are, not just how we appear. Salary was once the ultimate benchmark. Bigger paycheck, better life. But more people are asking a different question. Does this give me energy, or does it drain me? Because compensation means little if the cost is your vitality. Productivity used to be king. The more you could do, the more worthy you felt. But there's a shift happening, a movement from productivity to presence. From counting how many things you did, to caring how deeply you experienced them. We glorified hustle, praised busyness, idolized the always-on mentality. But the new currency is wholeness. It's boundaries. It's the audacity to say, I don't need to do more. I need to feel more whole. We once celebrated growth at all costs, believing that faster, bigger, and more meant better. Now we understand that not all growth is good. We seek growth with intention, expansion that doesn't come at the expense of our humanity. Being irreplaceable used to be the goal. Make yourself indispensable. Never take a day off. But now, peace has taken precedence. What good is being irreplaceable if you feel invisible to yourself? And perhaps most radically, we are letting go of the need to live up to every external standard. Instead, we're learning to live into self-trust, to make decisions from a place of alignment, not performance. This is not about shrinking your dreams. It's about making sure they're truly yours. Ambition still belongs in this story. But it must answer to a new master, one that values your aliveness more than your accolades. Redefinition in real time. You don't need to wait until everything collapses to start redefining success. You can begin in motion. Here are a few micro-decisions that build your new definition. Saying no to a meeting and yes to a walk. Rewriting your LinkedIn headline to reflect who you're becoming. Leaving work on time and reading a book that feeds your spirit. Asking yourself, do I want this, or do I just want to be seen wanting it? Telling the truth in one conversation, even if your voice shakes. Each small decision becomes a vote, not just for a different outcome, but for a different self. Success as stewardship, not sacrifice. In this new definition, success isn't about conquering the world. It's about caring for your corner of it. Your work, your well-being, your relationships, your joy. It asks, are you stewarding your life wisely? Are you managing your time, energy, and attention in ways that bring wholeness, not just applause? Because the most sustainable success isn't flashy. It's rooted. It's not urgent. It's peaceful. Before you move on, take 5 minutes to journal. What version of success did you inherit? What version are you ready to release? What would a success story written by you, for you, look like? And then, ask yourself, what can I do this week to honor my new definition, even in one small way? Because success, in its truest form, is not about being celebrated by everyone. It's about being at peace with yourself. Chapter 14. Thriving as a multipotentialite. You're not flaky, you're fluid. For most of your life, you were probably asked some version of the same question. So, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not who do you want to become? Not how do you want to live? Just, what? A job title. A single lane. A destination wrapped in identity. And maybe you answered with something respectable. Doctor. Lawyer. Teacher. Architect. Maybe you said what your parents wanted to hear. Or maybe you didn't have an answer and felt like something was wrong with you. But here's the truth many of us didn't know we were allowed to hear. Some people aren't wired for one thing. Some people are meant to follow many paths. Some people are curious about multiple worlds. Some people aren't specialists, they're synthesizers. These people aren't broken. They're not flaky. They're multipotentialites. And chances are, if you're reading this chapter, you're one of them. What it means to be a multipotentialite. The term multipotentialite was popularized by author and speaker Emily Wapnick, who defines it as someone with many interests and creative pursuits. Someone whose passions don't all point in one direction. Someone who doesn't want to choose just one path, because choosing one would mean abandoning others. Multipotentialites thrive on variety, learning, and reinvention. They're not scattered, they're expansive. They're not indecisive, they're multidimensional. They can dive deep into a field, master it, and then move on, not because they're failing, but because they're evolving. And yet, in a world that worships specialization, this kind of mind is often misunderstood. From an early age, multipotentialites are told to focus, commit, narrow down, pick a lane. We're taught that success belongs to the experts. That jumping between interests is a sign of immaturity. That mastery only counts if it comes with a long-term plan. So we try. We suppress our curiosity. We stick to one field, even when our soul starts shriveling. We feel guilty for getting bored. We call ourselves inconsistent. We fear that no one will ever take us seriously. But here's the twist. In a rapidly changing world, multipotentiality is not a liability, it's a superpower. The strengths of the many-path mind. Let's debunk the myth that multipotentialites are confused or unreliable. In reality, they often carry unique strengths that make them invaluable, especially in today's complex, interdisciplinary world. 1. Rapid learning. Multipotentialites are used to being beginners. They can learn new skills quickly and adapt with ease. Their curiosity fuels deep dives that, over time, become mastery in multiple areas. 2. Creative synthesis. Because they live across domains, multipotentialites are natural connectors. They bring ideas from one field into another, sparking innovation that specialists might miss. They don't just solve problems, they solve them creatively. 3. Emotional resilience. Having navigated multiple identities, industries, or creative practices, multipotentialites are often emotionally agile. They can reframe failure, handle reinvention, and see pivots as growth, not collapse. 4. Communication. To thrive across disciplines, you must learn to translate complex ideas for different audiences. Multipotentialites tend to be skilled communicators, bridging gaps between technical and human, abstract and practical. 5. Future readiness. In a world where industries are shifting faster than ever, people who can reskill, reimagine, and reinvent are not behind, they're ahead. The 21st century economy doesn't need linear paths. It needs agile thinkers. So if you've ever worried that you're too scattered or unfocused, take a breath. You're not failing the system. You just weren't built to be one thing. Real stories from the many. Aisha, once a chemical engineer, now works as a food systems researcher. Before that, she was a high school science teacher. In her free time, she creates hand-drawn educational animations. People used to think I couldn't commit, she says. Now they ask me to lead projects because I can see connections they don't. Jules started out in marketing, then became a yoga teacher, then went into UX design. At some point, I stopped trying to make my CV look logical and just focused on whether I was contributing meaningfully, they said. Funny thing is, once I embraced my multipotentiality, clients started finding me more valuable, because I bring layers they can't teach. Obinna was a software developer in Lagos who taught himself photography as a creative outlet. His photo essays on urban life became so compelling that a non-profit hired him to document social justice issues. My tech skills help me build platforms, he says. My photography helps me tell stories. Together, they help me make change. These stories are not exceptions. They're signals. A new definition of professional identity is emerging, one that honors range, not just depth. The pain of outgrowing a single story. Still, let's be honest, thriving as a multipotentialite isn't always easy. It means outgrowing career advice that was never meant for you. It means confronting the fear of being misunderstood. It means learning how to frame your story when the world prefers tidy bias and linear paths. Multipotentialites often face internal conflict. They feel excited about a new interest, but guilty for letting go of the last one. They're told to stick with it by well-meaning mentors. They're warned about job hopping or losing focus. So instead of embracing our curiosity, we hide it. We try to fit in. We wear a title like a costume and hope no one sees how restless we feel underneath. But what if the restlessness isn't the problem? What if it's a sign that your growth doesn't live in one direction? What if it's an invitation, not to settle, but to expand? Making multipotentiality work in the real world. Let's talk logistics. Being a multipotentialite doesn't mean giving up security or structure. It means learning how to build a life that honors your range on purpose. 1. Design a fluid career path. You don't have to change careers every year to honor your interests. You can weave them together. Some people find roles that combine multiple skills, like communications and data, or education and tech. Others maintain a steady job while pursuing creative passions on the side. Some alternate between full-time roles and creative sabbaticals. The key is to stop asking, what do I want to be, and start asking, how do I want to live? 2. Create a portfolio life. Think of your life like an investment portfolio. Not every activity needs to be full-time or income-generating. You might have a core job, a passion project, a freelance gig, and a volunteer role, each serving a different part of you. This structure gives you variety, stability, and room to evolve. 3. Tell a coherent story. You don't need a linear resume, but you do need a cohesive narrative. Focus on the through line between your interests. Maybe it's problem-solving, or storytelling, or justice, or systems thinking. Frame your path not as a list of unrelated jobs, but as a journey guided by values and curiosity. 4. Embrace seasons. You don't have to do everything all at once. You can be fully immersed in one domain for a season, and then shift. Multipotentialites often operate in cycles. Instead of fearing the end of a chapter, start trusting that your next one is already unfolding. 5. Prioritize energy over approval. Ask yourself, what energizes me, even if it confuses other people? What drains me, even if it impresses them? Let your energy be your compass. Because your life has to make sense to you before it makes sense to anyone else. You are not alone. The world is slowly catching up to what multipotentialites have known all along. The most interesting lives rarely fit into a box. In 2022, an MIT study on workforce resilience found that people with hybrid skill sets, those who blend creative, analytical, technical, and interpersonal strengths, were more adaptable in the face of economic shifts. In 2023, the World Bank noted that future leaders will be those who integrate knowledge across sectors, cultures, and disciplines. Translation: the world is making room for people like you. But you don't need global reports to validate your path. You need to remember that you've always had permission to explore, to shift, to follow your fascinations, even when they don't come with job titles. Especially then. The gift of multipotentiality. Multipotentialites bring a certain texture to life. They're the ones who ask unexpected questions, who start side projects that spark revolutions, who remix disciplines to create entirely new paths. They remind us that identity is not a destination, it's a process. That our value doesn't lie in what we do forever, but in how fully we engage with what calls us now. That growth isn't linear. It's layered, iterative, beautifully unfinished. So if you've ever felt like you're too much, too curious, too changeable, know this. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. Your range is not a flaw. It's a feature. You are not lost. You are led. And the world doesn't need more perfectly polished specialists pretending they're fulfilled. It needs more whole humans who are brave enough to live all of who they are, even if it doesn't fit into a single box. Especially then. Chapter 15. Your talent isn't a trap, it's a clue. Reinvent yourself by reinterpreting your story. There's a certain pain that only high achievers understand, the pain of being really good at something that doesn't feel good anymore. It's the quiet ache of excellence misplaced. The slow erosion of energy when your gifts are used in the wrong room. The subtle grief of realizing that your talent brought you here, but it may not take you where you truly want to go. In the early chapters of this book, we named this phenomenon the golden cage, a career that looks impressive from the outside but feels misaligned on the inside. For many people, that misalignment starts with talent. Being skilled in a particular domain creates early success. Early success attracts attention. Attention brings opportunities. And before long, you're locked into a path that no longer feels like a choice. But here's the twist: the problem isn't your talent. Your talent isn't a trap. It's a clue. A clue about who you are, what you value, and how you're wired to contribute. But to decode it, you have to stop seeing talent as destiny, and start seeing it as raw material. The trap of early success. Many of us became specialists before we understood ourselves. Maybe you were praised as the smart one, the reliable one, the creative one, or the performer. Maybe you showed aptitude for science, or writing, or leadership, or fixing things, and people celebrated that. And because we're social beings, we internalized that praise. We built identities around those early wins. We didn't just do the thing, we became the thing. I'm a lawyer. I'm a coder. I'm a consultant. I'm a leader. I'm a teacher. There's nothing wrong with pride in your abilities. But when our identities become too fused with one type of talent, we start believing that the role we play is the person we are. And that belief can become a prison. We stay where we're good, even if we're not well. We get stuck performing excellence, instead of living with alignment. We silence the parts of us that are curious about other things, because we're afraid of starting over, looking foolish, or disappointing those who expect us to stay in our lane. But here's a question worth asking. What if your talent was never meant to lock you in? What if it was meant to lead you home? Talent as a signal, not a sentence. To reclaim your power, you need to reinterpret your talent. Instead of seeing it as a fixed category, see it as a dynamic signal. A breadcrumb trail. A doorway. Ask. What parts of this talent feel energizing, even after all this time? What am I actually doing when I'm good at this? Is it analyzing? Teaching? Storytelling? Leading? Connecting? What deeper strength is hiding beneath the surface skill? What values are embedded in the way I use this talent? Let's say you're a great project manager. The obvious interpretation is I'm good at managing timelines and logistics. But the deeper clue might be, I thrive in environments where I bring clarity to chaos. Or I love helping people execute ideas. Or I have a deep need to feel useful and trusted in collaborative spaces. That insight is powerful, not because it locks you into project management forever, but because it tells you something about your design. Maybe that same core gift could be used in operations, in creative production, in event planning, in community organizing, or in running your own business. The point is not to abandon your talent, but to extract the essence of it and ask, where else could this serve me better? Your current job may be one expression of your talent, but it is not the only one. The myth of the one true calling. Another lie we've been fed is that we each have one calling, one perfect job, one meant-to-be role where all our talents magically align. The truth is, most of us don't have one calling. We have patterns. And those patterns can express themselves in dozens of different roles, seasons, and contexts. You might notice that you've always gravitated toward helping people understand hard things. That doesn't mean you're stuck being a teacher forever. It could also make you a great instructional designer, coach, curriculum developer, communicator, or trainer. Or maybe your pattern is solving complex problems under pressure. That could look like emergency medicine, or crisis communications, or engineering, or running a startup. Calling isn't one thing. It's the thread that runs through your things. And talent. It's the raw thread. How you weave it, that's up to you. Rewriting the meaning of your talent story. Let's take this even further. What if your current career, even if it's misaligned, was not a waste of time, but a source of data? What if it taught you exactly what you value, what you're good at, what drains you, and what lights you up? What if your resume is not a record of your identity, but a map of your evolution? This is the core shift we need, moving from trapped by talent to transformed by talent. You don't need to discard your story. You need to reinterpret it. Take every job, project, or season you've been in and ask, what did I learn about myself? What did I love, and what did I endure? What strengths did I sharpen? What assumptions did I outgrow? What values became clearer? When you reframe your past not as a mistake, but as material, something changes. You stop resenting your journey. You start reclaiming it. You realize that talent wasn't the trap. It was the clue that brought you this far. And now, it's time to decide where it leads next. The Reinvention Resume Exercise. To help you reflect and move forward, try this powerful exercise, the Reinvention Resume. Instead of listing jobs and roles, list talent themes and the various ways you've expressed them. For example, talent theme, communicating complex ideas. Wrote technical documentation as a software engineer. Led onboarding sessions for new hires. Taught digital literacy workshops at local nonprofits. Created educational videos on YouTube. Talent theme, organizing and leading people. Managed a 12-person team in product development. Volunteered as a community garden coordinator. Ran logistics for a friend's wedding. Launched a local networking group for freelancers. Do this for 3 to 5 themes. Then reflect. Which of these expressions felt most alive? Which contexts drained me? What do I want to explore next? This exercise isn't about polishing your CV. It's about discovering the through lines in your journey, so you can make your next move with clarity and confidence. When you're good at too many things. A special word to those who feel overwhelmed by their talent abundance. You're not lost. You're led. It's okay to be good at multiple things. The challenge is choosing which gifts to grow in this season of your life. You don't have to monetize every talent. You don't have to build careers out of all of them. Some talents are for money. Some are for joy. Some are for service. Some are for healing. Learn to discern which is which. You can't do everything at once. But you can do everything over time, if you stop seeing talent as a static trait and start seeing it as a toolkit you get to use intentionally. And remember, your talent doesn't owe anyone consistency. It owes you truth. When talent becomes identity. Perhaps the hardest part of this work is letting go of the identities we built around our talents. When people know you as the high performer, the artist, the tech guy, or the go-to person, it can be terrifying to shift. You'll worry that you're disappointing others. You'll fear losing relevance. You might even mourn the version of you that once thrived in that space. That's real. That's grief. But it's also growth. Because your worth is not tied to one skill set. Your power is not bound to one role. Your identity is not frozen in one season. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to be new. And you are allowed to take your talent with you, not as baggage, but as ballast. Let your talent point you toward joy. As we near the end of this chapter, here's what I want you to remember. You're not here just to be competent. You're here to be whole. You're not meant to survive your talent, you're meant to be supported by it. If a job, role, or industry is demanding your talent but starving your soul, that's not your forever. That's your invitation. The real gift of talent is not what it gets you. It's what it reveals about what makes you feel alive. And when you follow that aliveness, when you let your skills serve your spirit, not just your salary, that's when talent becomes a tool for transformation. So don't discard your abilities. Don't burn your past. Pick up the thread. Hold it in your hands. And begin to weave something new. Chapter 16. Building your personal operating system. Systems for sustainable alignment. There's a moment that comes after the breakthrough. After the realization that you're misaligned. After the decision to stop pretending. After the courage to pivot, even if only internally at first. It's the moment you ask, now what? Now that I've shed the old version of success, how do I live the new one? Now that I've redefined success, how do I sustain it? Because alignment isn't a one-time event. It's a way of living. A rhythm. A relationship with yourself that needs tending. It's not just about one bold decision, it's about the systems that support who you're becoming. That's where your personal operating system comes in. What is a personal operating system? Think of your personal operating system, POS, as the set of values, habits, rituals, tools, and boundaries that help you live with alignment, consistently, not just occasionally. Just like a computer has an operating system that determines how everything runs beneath the surface, you need one for your life and work. One that's built with intention. One that fits you. Your POS is how you manage your energy. It's how you prioritize your time. It's how you handle stress, make decisions, and return to yourself when the world pulls you away. Without one, even the most inspiring vision will burn out. With one, you create a life that doesn't just look aligned, but actually feels sustainable. Why you need systems, not just motivation. Let's be honest, motivation fades. Breakthroughs are fleeting. Even the best intentions can get buried under inboxes, bills, and burnout. What keeps you aligned when things get hard isn't willpower. It's structure. It's the repeatable rhythms that ground you. The non-negotiables you return to. The defaults you design for when life gets messy. You don't rise to the level of your ambition. You fall to the level of your systems. This chapter is about building systems that make your aligned life not just possible, but inevitable. The core pillars of a personal operating system. Your personal operating system rests on 5 essential pillars. 1. Energy, how you manage your physical, emotional, and creative fuel. 2. Time, how you structure your days, weeks, and seasons. 3. Values, what matters most, and how you protect it. 4. Identity, how you stay connected to who you are becoming. 5. Boundaries, how you guard your alignment against outside pull. Let's explore each one and what it looks like in practice. 1. Energy. Protect the power source. You are not a machine. You are a living, breathing system. And your energy is not infinite. Many people who escape the wrong career quickly find themselves overwhelmed, not by misalignment this time, but by trying to get it right in their new season without adequate rest or clarity. That's why managing your energy, not just your time, is foundational. Ask yourself, what activities give me energy, even if they're hard? What drains me, even if they look productive? What rhythms, sleep, food, movement, rest, keep me grounded? This is where tools like an energy audit come in. For 1 week, track your energy in chunks. After each task, ask, did this drain me or fill me? At the end of the week, look for patterns. Then start designing your schedule to minimize the drains and maximize the charges. Also, pay attention to your creative rhythms. Some people work best in sprints. Others thrive in slow, consistent rituals. Some do deep work in the morning. Others come alive at night. Don't copy someone else's schedule. Design your own. Energy isn't just about doing more. It's about doing what matters with presence. 2. Time. Structure that honors your season. Time management is often sold as a productivity hack. But in an aligned life, it becomes something deeper, a reflection of your values in motion. Ask yourself, what's essential in this season of life? What do I want my mornings, weeks, or weekends to feel like? How can I structure my time around my priorities, not just my obligations? This might look like blocking out non-negotiable time for deep work, creativity, or rest. It might mean theme days, like Mondays for meetings, Wednesdays for writing, Fridays for administration. It might mean building in white space so your brain can breathe. It also means honoring seasons. You don't need the same schedule year-round. Some seasons are for planting, some for harvesting, some for resting. Learn to identify where you are, and build accordingly. Time, in an aligned life, isn't something you fill. It's something you shape. 3. Values. Anchor everything. Your values are your inner compass. But they're only useful if they're visible. So ask, what do I actually value? Not what I say I value, but what I show I value through action. Where am I compromising my values out of fear, habit, or people-pleasing? How can I bring my values back into the center of my life? Try writing down your top 5 values. Not vague ideals like success or freedom, but specific, embodied truths like creative expression, family presence, spiritual groundedness, honest communication, or service through leadership. Now ask, how is my current life structure helping or hurting these? Then, choose one weekly ritual to honor each value. For example, if you value growth, schedule time for learning. If you value connection, schedule time for deep conversation. If you value health, build in movement. Living your values doesn't require huge life changes. It requires consistent, visible acts of integrity. 4. Identity. Stay connected to who you're becoming. Reinvention can feel disorienting. When you leave an old identity behind, it's easy to feel unmoored. That's why your personal operating system needs a way to reconnect you to who you are becoming, not just who you were. Here are a few ways to do that. Daily anchors, a simple phrase, affirmation, or question you return to. Something like, I choose alignment over approval, or what would the next version of me do? Visible reminders, a photo, object, or post-it note that reminds you of your current season. Your desk, journal, or phone background can hold this gently for you. Weekly reflection. At the end of each week, ask, where did I show up as my most aligned self? Where did I drift? What would I like to adjust? Your identity isn't static, but it does need a center. And the more often you return to it, the more stable your reinvention becomes. 5. Boundaries. Guard the garden. Boundaries are not walls. They're gates. They protect what you're growing. Without boundaries, your aligned life gets overrun by the expectations, emergencies, and energies of others. Ask yourself, where am I overextended or resentful? Where am I saying yes when I mean no? What people, platforms, or habits are hijacking my attention? Then make a boundary plan. It doesn't have to be drastic. Maybe you stop checking email before 10 a.m. Maybe you tell your team you're unavailable after 6. Maybe you unfollow accounts that trigger comparison. The goal is not to control everything. It's to curate the conditions in which you can thrive. Boundaries let your alignment breathe. Designing your aligned life wheel. One way to visualize your personal operating system is through the Aligned Life Wheel, a simple tool that helps you check in on key domains of your life. Draw a circle and divide it into 6 equal segments labeled 1. Energy. 2. Work. 3. Relationships. 4. Creativity. 5. Growth. 6. Rest. Now, rate each area on a scale of 1 to 10 based on how aligned and nourished it feels right now. Then draw a curved line connecting the dots. Chances are, your wheel will be uneven. That's okay. The point is not perfection, it's awareness. What's thriving? What's being neglected? Where is energy leaking? Use this as a monthly or quarterly ritual. Not to shame yourself, but to realign. Because alignment is not a destination. It's a practice. Make it yours. Your personal operating system doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It doesn't need to follow a productivity guru's plan or fit into a perfect template. It just needs to work for you. Maybe your system includes morning pages and afternoon walks. Maybe it's bullet journaling and Friday night digital detox. Maybe it's 20-minute work sprints and long evening baths. Maybe it's quarterly solo retreats. Maybe it's having one word that guides your year. Whatever it is, make it yours. Not optimized. Not aesthetic. Just honest. A life that's aligned is a life that fits, not just your goals, but your soul. Before you move on, take a moment to reflect. What part of my life feels most aligned right now? What pillar of my personal operating system needs the most attention? What one small shift can I make this week to support the life I'm building? And then ask yourself the most important question of all. What does it look like to build a life that sustains me, not just inspires me? Because inspiration is a spark. But systems, that's the firewood. That's what keeps the flame alive. Part 5. Beyond You, from career change to cultural change. At first, this journey feels personal. It starts with your questions, your restlessness, your desire for more. But eventually, something shifts. You realize, this isn't just about you. The systems that shaped your misalignment are shaping others, too. And your reinvention, your decision to choose alignment over expectation, becomes an act of quiet rebellion. A signal to others that freedom is possible. This section is about that ripple effect. It's about learning to speak your truth out loud, to your family, your boss, your culture. It's about creating new models of success that others can see, follow, and build upon. And it's about legacy, not as status, but as impact. Because when you reclaim your life, you don't just change your story. You make it easier for others to change theirs. Chapter 17. Talking Alignment. How to communicate the life you're choosing, even when it confuses people. There's a strange and tender season that comes after you've made the internal decision to realign your life. You've admitted to yourself that the old path isn't working. You're dreaming of something different, something more true, more alive, more yours. But then comes the next layer, telling other people. How do you explain that the job that made you successful no longer makes you whole? How do you talk to your parents, your partner, your colleagues, or even your friends, when your decision doesn't make logical sense, but it makes soul sense? How do you talk alignment without sounding like you've gone off the deep end? This chapter is about those conversations, the awkward ones, the emotional ones, the necessary ones. Because the truth is, alignment doesn't just require courage in your choices, it requires clarity in your communication. And the more honest and grounded you become in how you speak about your realignment, the easier it becomes to live it. Why talking about alignment feels hard. Let's name why these conversations feel difficult. First, alignment often begins as an inner shift before anything changes on the outside. You might still be in the same job, relationship, or city, but something in you has already moved. That mismatch between internal truth and external form can be hard to explain. Second, alignment challenges social norms. People expect you to want success, stability, upward motion. When you step outside of that framework, even for your own peace, it can feel like you're breaking an unspoken contract. Third, we fear judgment. We don't want to sound ungrateful, confused, flaky, or idealistic. We worry that people will misunderstand our choices or question our competence. And fourth, we're often still figuring it out ourselves. It's hard to explain a path that doesn't have a neat label yet. All of this makes it tempting to stay quiet, to hide your shift, to keep performing the old role in public while quietly reinventing in private. But silence creates its own pain. It isolates you. It robs others of the chance to support you. And it reinforces the idea that alignment is something to be ashamed of. It's not. Alignment is brave. Alignment is beautiful. Alignment is deeply human. So let's learn how to talk about it. Talking to family. Family can be one of the most emotionally loaded places to talk alignment, especially if your career was part of the family pride narrative. Maybe you were the one who made it. Maybe your job gave your parents something to brag about. Maybe your achievements validated sacrifices made on your behalf. So when you talk about wanting to pivot, or even just pause, it can feel like betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's honesty. Here are a few principles for talking to family. 1. Lead with love and reassurance. Start by affirming the relationship. Let them know you understand their perspective and value their care. Try. I know how much you've supported me to get here. I understand this may sound surprising, and I want you to hear it from me directly. I'm not throwing away everything, I'm realigning based on what I've learned about myself. 2. Frame it as evolution, not failure. Many family members fear change because they assume it means loss or crisis. Reframe it. Try. This isn't about giving up. It's about growing into something that fits better. I'm learning to trust myself more. That's a good thing. I've realized that success for me looks a little different now, and I want to build a life I can truly sustain. 3. Invite, don't defend. You don't have to argue or convince. Just invite them to see you more fully. Try. I'd love to share more if you're open. I don't expect you to completely understand right away, I just hope you'll stay in conversation with me as I figure this out. Talking to a partner or spouse. Few conversations are more delicate than the ones that touch finances, roles, or family responsibilities. When your alignment journey affects someone else's stability, it requires extra care and communication. Here's how to approach it. 1. Prepare for the emotional, not just the logistical. This isn't just a planning meeting. It's a moment of vulnerability. Acknowledge that change can be scary, and also liberating. Try. I've been feeling a shift inside me that I want to share with you, not because I've figured everything out, but because I trust you. 2. Get clear on your needs. What are you asking for? Support, time, financial space, emotional understanding. Be specific. Try. I'm considering exploring other paths over the next year, and I want to talk about what that means for us. This doesn't mean I'm being reckless. I'm committed to our stability. I just need a different kind of rhythm right now. 3. Reaffirm your partnership. Make sure they know you're still in this with them. Try. I want us to grow stronger through this, not apart. That's why I'm being honest now, not later. Alignment in a relationship doesn't mean you always want the same thing. It means you're willing to see each other and support the truth in each other, even when it requires recalibration. Talking to friends. Friends are often the safest and the trickiest people to talk to. Some will cheer you on. Others might get awkward. Especially if your reinvention triggers something unspoken in them. That's okay. Here's how to approach it. 1. Lead with curiosity, not certainty. It's okay to be in process. You don't need a perfect plan to share your truth. Try. I'm starting to question whether the path I'm on still fits me. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm exploring. 2. Notice who listens without projecting. Some friends will make it about them. You're leaving your job. I could never do that. That's not a judgment on you, it's a reflection of their own framework. Seek out those who can hold your process without needing to solve it. 3. Let people grow with you, or grow distant. Some friendships won't survive your alignment. Not because anyone did something wrong, but because you're no longer orbiting the same stories. That's painful. And that's also part of growth. The people meant for your next chapter will find their way there. Talking to employers and colleagues. This one requires discernment. Not everyone needs the full story, but if you're planning a shift, a sabbatical, or a role change, how you communicate matters. 1. Be professional, but honest. You don't need to bare your soul, but you can still speak from a place of clarity. Try. I've been reflecting deeply on where I'm most energized and where I can add the most value. I'm starting to feel a pull in a new direction, and I want to make this transition with integrity. 2. Offer a timeline and a plan. People respect clarity. If you're planning to leave, give a sense of your timeframe and how you'll support the transition. 3. Leave well. Even if your job was misaligned, let your exit be a reflection of who you are, not how frustrated you feel. Reputation is currency. Honor your own growth by leaving with dignity. Talking to yourself. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, you have to learn how to talk alignment to the one person who matters most, you. Your inner voice can either sabotage or support your journey. So start listening. Start rewriting. When your mind says, "You're being irresponsible," answer, "I'm being honest." That's not the same thing. When your fear says, "This will never work," respond, "This has already worked, because I'm no longer abandoning myself." When your doubt says, "Who do you think you are?" say gently, "Someone who's finally remembering." You are not wrong for wanting a life that feels like yours. Speak that truth out loud, until it feels like home. A few scripts to start the conversation. If you're still unsure where to begin, here are a few conversation openers tailored to different relationships. To a parent or elder. I've been reflecting on my life path, and I realize I need to make some changes to be more aligned with who I truly am. I respect everything you've given me, and I want to live in a way that honors that while staying true to myself. To a partner. I've been holding something inside because I wasn't sure how to say it. But I need to. I'm starting to feel misaligned in my current path. I want us to navigate this together, not as a crisis, but as a next chapter. To a mentor or former boss. I want to thank you for the role you played in my growth. I'm exploring a shift right now, not because I'm running from anything, but because I'm ready for something new. I value your insight and wanted to share where I'm headed. To a close friend. I'm in a season of re-evaluation. Some things that used to feel like me don't anymore. I might be changing directions. It's scary, but it also feels true. I'd love your support, even if you don't fully understand it yet. Let your voice lead your life. Talking alignment is not about convincing anyone of your worth. It's about honoring your truth in public, so your life can match the one you're building inside. Not everyone will get it. Some people will misunderstand you. Some will distance themselves. Others will draw closer than ever before. But you are not responsible for managing other people's comfort. You are responsible for living aligned and communicating with clarity, kindness, and courage. Because the more you speak from your truth, the more others learn how to do the same. And that is how personal alignment becomes cultural change. One honest conversation at a time. Chapter 18. From Reinvention to Legacy. The Evolution Beyond the Self. Reinvention often begins with discomfort. Misalignment. A slow, gnawing realization that something doesn't feel right. But as we progress from noticing to acting, from shedding outdated roles to reclaiming our inner compass, we reach a deeper threshold, the shift from personal liberation to collective contribution. This is the moment when reinvention ceases to be about escape and begins to be about legacy. Legacy doesn't require a podium or a book deal or a building with your name on it. It starts with how your alignment ripples outward, into your family, your community, your team, your culture. When you live in integrity with your values, you give others permission to do the same. Your personal truth becomes a public service. Personal freedom as public impact. There is a myth that legacy is built in old age, after a lifetime of work. But legacy is not something you leave behind. It's something you build while you're here. It's the imprint you leave on the lives you touch, whether through mentorship, innovation, courage, or care. When you choose alignment, you start changing more than your own life. You shift the energy of every room you walk into. You challenge norms just by existing fully. You model what's possible. Consider these examples. A burnt-out lawyer transitions into advocacy for workplace mental health and influences HR policies across her firm. A tech engineer pivots to education, teaching code to underserved youth and helps shift the demographics of future innovation. A high-achieving student rejects the family path of medicine and becomes an artist, inspiring younger cousins to pursue what truly lights them up. Every realignment is a form of activism. Not loud or performative, but foundational. You don't need a movement to start a movement. You need truth, lived out loud. Introducing the Legacy Lens. One way to begin thinking about your broader impact is through the legacy lens, a series of questions that invites you to shift from what do I want to do to what do I want to leave behind. Ask yourself, what kind of world do I want to help create? Who is watching me for cues on what's possible? What values do I want to amplify? How might my healing create space for others to heal? What system or belief do I want to gently disrupt? Legacy doesn't always look like creating something new. Sometimes it looks like refusing to pass down the same pain. Sometimes it looks like modeling softness in a world that rewards hardness. Sometimes it looks like telling the truth, so others feel safe to do the same. The platform pyramid, building with intention. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a leader, a parent, or a creative, you have a platform. It might be small. It might be informal. But your presence is a form of influence. Use the platform pyramid to think strategically about the reach and resonance of your reinvention. Start with your personal foundation. Are you living in alignment with your values? Then consider your relational ripple, how you show up in your closest relationships. Next, your community contribution, your participation in or shaping of your workplace, neighborhood, or digital spaces. And finally, your potential for cultural shift, what norms you're quietly challenging or redefining through your presence and choices. The pyramid starts with you, but it doesn't end with you. Sustainable legacy is built from the inside out. From inner work to outer change. Sometimes, we wait to feel ready to make an impact. We believe we need more credibility, clarity, or credentials. But alignment itself is a form of leadership. When you choose authenticity over approval, you shift the field. When you speak your truth in a meeting, someone else breathes easier. When you model rest in a hustle culture, you give others permission to slow down. One aligned choice can start a chain reaction. You may never see the full ripple effect of your reinvention, but that doesn't make it any less real. The contribution canvas, designing your legacy. To help clarify your unique impact, try using the contribution canvas. Reflect on 5 key elements. Your gift. What you're uniquely skilled at or passionate about. It could be coaching, storytelling, designing, teaching, or problem solving. Your audience, who you feel called to serve or support. Think of specific groups, first-gen students, burnt-out professionals, young artists, immigrant families. Your message, the truth or perspective you want to amplify. Perhaps it's, you can change without starting from scratch, or wholeness matters more than hustle. Your method, how you best express and deliver value. Is it through writing, mentoring, speaking, building, or listening? Your ripple, the wider effect you hope your actions have. Maybe it's creating more courageous conversations in families, or more ethical leadership in business. By connecting these dots, you turn alignment into contribution, not through performance, but through resonance. Legacy becomes less about being impressive and more about being of service. Redefining success as service. A pivotal shift in reinvention is redefining success not as status, but as service. This doesn't mean martyrdom or people-pleasing. It means recognizing that your life is not just yours to consume, it's yours to contribute. You succeed when your presence helps others rise. You win when your truth frees someone else to speak theirs. You lead when your life becomes a lighthouse, not just a resume. Success, in this light, becomes regenerative. It feeds you and others. It builds rather than burns. It lifts instead of isolates. Legacy as a living practice. Legacy isn't an endpoint. It's a practice. A posture. A set of choices made again and again. To live in alignment even when it's inconvenient. To speak truth even when it's uncomfortable. To create room for others, not just yourself. You don't have to wait for wealth or wisdom or a TED Talk to start shaping legacy. You do it when you write an honest email that opens dialogue. Mentor someone struggling with the same misalignment you overcame. Share your story in a way that makes others feel less alone. Choose integrity over image. These are not small acts. They are seeds. Your legacy lives in people. Ultimately, legacy is not what you build. It's who you build. It's the intern who remembers your kindness. The child who learns that joy matters. The friend who saw you reinvent and thought, maybe I can too. You may never be quoted in books or cited in articles. But your influence will live in choices people make because they knew you. And that is enough. Before you move on, take time to reflect and journal. What values do I want to be remembered for? What pain have I healed that could become someone else's blueprint? Who in my life is quietly watching me for cues on what's possible? How can I start turning personal alignment into public contribution? This week? Your story doesn't end with reinvention. It deepens into legacy. Let your life become a permission slip. Let your path become a prototype. Let your presence become a place where others come home to themselves. Not someday. Today. Because the courage to live in truth is not just for you. It's a torch. And you are already carrying it. Chapter 19. The courage to begin again and again. The myth of one-time reinvention. For most of our lives, we are taught to believe in finality. The final exam. The final degree. The final job title. The final arrival. This myth of a singular destination keeps many of us trapped in rigid paths, holding our breath for the moment when we'll finally figure it all out. But reinvention doesn't happen once. It happens again and again. It is not a line you cross, but a loop you travel. Not a finish line, but a rhythm of returning, to yourself, to your truth, to your evolving life. In a world that's constantly shifting, economies, identities, relationships, passions, reinvention isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. And those who thrive are not the ones who avoid change, but those who learn how to move with it. The reinvention loop. The journey of realignment often follows a recognizable loop. Awareness, action, alignment, awakening again. Awareness is the discomfort. The quiet hum of something's off. It might show up as burnout, boredom, or a longing you can't explain. Action is the brave step, a boundary set, a class taken, a truth spoken. Alignment is when you feel the shift, energy returns, clarity sharpens, joy peeks through. Awakening is the new self that emerges. The insight. The identity. The expansion. And then, life continues. You grow. The context shifts. You evolve. And so you begin again. Why we resist starting over. Despite knowing that change is constant, many of us resist beginning again. Here's why. 1. Fear of judgment. We worry about what people will think. Didn't you already figure this out? 2. Identity attachment. We've invested years building a version of ourselves. Starting over feels like betrayal. 3. Fatigue. Reinvention is not easy. The idea of doing it again, especially when the last time was hard, can feel overwhelming. 4. Perfectionism. We want guarantees. A perfect plan. A promised outcome. But beginnings are rarely neat. What we forget is that starting again doesn't erase who we were. It honors who we've become. Proof that you can do this. Look back at your own life. You've already begun again more times than you realize. The first time you moved cities or countries. The first time you changed your major. The first time you said, "This isn't working." The first time you broke up, quit, healed, tried, failed, loved again. You are already someone who knows how to begin again. This isn't new. It's just the next chapter. Stories of continuous reinvention. Consider Mina, who started her career as a corporate lawyer, transitioned into non-profit leadership, then discovered her true joy in gardening and opened a community-supported agriculture program at 48. She didn't reinvent once. She reinvented as often as her truth changed. Or Idris, who spent 15 years in journalism before becoming a grief counselor after the death of his brother. It wasn't a career change, he says. It was a soul shift. A few years later, he began writing again, this time about loss, love, and what it means to stay human. And Layla, who launched a startup in her 20s, burned out by 30, took a sabbatical, then returned to her industry, not to build another company, but to help others recover from the hustle trauma she knew too well. Each of them had to begin again. Not because they failed, but because they evolved. Reinvention as a muscle. The more you practice beginning again, the stronger your courage becomes. Like any muscle, reinvention grows through repetition. It gets easier to recognize when something no longer fits. Listen to your inner compass without delay. Take small, bold steps before the cost of staying grows too high. You stop asking, "What will people think?" and start asking, "What would it cost me to stay silent?" You stop seeking approval and start seeking alignment. Permission to change your mind. One of the most radical things you can do in a world obsessed with certainty is to admit you've changed your mind. To say, "This is no longer me." You are allowed to update your definition of success. You are allowed to outgrow what once felt right. You are allowed to pivot, shift, try again, reimagine. The version of you that made those past choices was doing their best with what they knew. Honor them. Then let them go. Building a life that allows you to begin again. If you want reinvention to become a natural part of your life, you need a foundation that can hold it. That means emotional safety, surrounding yourself with people who celebrate growth, not just consistency. Financial flexibility, budgeting and saving in ways that make pivots possible. Narrative ownership, letting go of the need to explain your changes to everyone. Your story belongs to you. Design your life not as a rigid staircase, but as a spacious playground, one that leaves room for curiosity, creativity, and change. Practices to support ongoing reinvention. 1. Quarterly self-check-ins. Ask, what's working? What's draining me? What's calling me? 2. Curiosity appointments. Schedule time every month to explore something new, a book, a class, a conversation. 3. Fear mapping. Write out your biggest fear about starting over. Then list what might happen if you don't. 4. Joy tracking. Keep a log of what lights you up. Patterns will emerge and point you toward your next direction. 5. Gratitude for past selves. Write a letter to the version of you who made past choices. Thank them. Then release them. These aren't just rituals. They are anchors in motion, helping you stay grounded as you grow. What if it doesn't work out? Let's name the truth. Reinvention involves risk. Sometimes the new thing isn't what you hoped. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes you pivot more than once before it clicks. But what's the alternative? Staying stuck in a life that doesn't fit. Failure in reinvention is never final. It's feedback. It's refinement. It's part of the process. Each time you begin again, you do so with more wisdom, more self-trust, more clarity. Reinvention doesn't get easier, it gets truer. Redefining mastery. We've been taught to admire mastery, the person who stays the course, hones one craft, climbs one ladder. But what if mastery could look different? What if mastery is the ability to be a beginner? What if it's the courage to step off the ladder entirely? What if it's the grace to shift when your soul says, "It's time"? You can master reinvention, not by avoiding change, but by embracing it as your teacher. Before you move on, pause and reflect. What's calling you to begin again? Where have you been ignoring your own discomfort? What small step can you take this week toward a more aligned life? What fear are you ready to name and release? Write your answers. Speak them out loud. Let them land in your bones. Because the life you want isn't waiting at the end of a single reinvention. It's unfolding through every brave beginning you choose to make. Not once, but again and again. Conclusion. The door was never locked. If you've made it to this final chapter, then something inside you has already begun to shift. Maybe it's not a full decision yet. Maybe it's still a quiet knowing, a tender discomfort, or a single, courageous question. What if I want something different? That's enough. This book was never about telling you what to do. It was about reminding you that you have the right to ask. The right to want. The right to change. You've seen how praise can become a prison. You've understood why early choices, about degrees, debt, identity, can shape entire decades. You've witnessed how high achievers can suffer in silence, not from lack of success, but from misalignment. You've learned that leaving isn't weakness. It's wisdom. And you've begun practicing a different kind of bravery. Listening to yourself again. Trusting slow pivots over dramatic leaps. Redefining success as resonance, not recognition. Turning reinvention into legacy. That's not a self-help trend. That's liberation. You don't have to know exactly what comes next. You don't have to have a 5-year plan. You just have to take the next honest step. Maybe it's a conversation, a journal entry, a boundary, a class, a day off that you don't justify to anyone. Whatever it is, do it not because you have it all figured out, but because your soul deserves a seat at the table. Let this be the beginning, not of a perfect life, but of an aligned one. One where your gifts serve you, not trap you. One where your truth leads, not hides. One where your presence feels like peace, not performance. The golden cage was never locked. You can walk out whenever you're ready. And when you do, you won't just be free. You'll be whole.